Hello, Glidus.
Yo, what's up?
Do you remember House of the Dragon?
Jog my memory.
It's the Game of Thrones prequel show about a Targaryen civil war 130 years before Daenerys and Jon Snow.
Oh, that sounds familiar. That's based on a book, isn't it?
It's based on the book Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin.
Oh, I know that guy.
He bought you a burrito.
Yeah, that was nice of him.
And House of the Dragon Season 2 came out like a couple of months ago.
Wow, how time flies.
It was pretty good.
It was somewhat frustrating.
It had ups and downs.
Dragon time. Talk about the lizards. Breathing fire in the sky.
Wow, that was a fantastic intro, guys. And now it's a sponsorship. This day keeps getting better. Hi, I'm Dragon Time, and I'm brought to you by Nebula, the independent streaming platform where this video's already been out for a few days. While YouTube has been getting the edited down highlights of the Dragon Time series, Nebula has the whole thing. Just for today, you're getting the full thing though, the unmitigated spoiler zone. But this means there's an entire 13 extra hours of our House of the Dragon Season 2 coverage up there, not to mention our Season 1 retrospectives and our generational yarn, The Fake Jon Snow. A 22-hour-long thing which has been described as, I'm too busy to watch that. But Nebula isn't just where I live, it's where lots of people live. Like... holy shit, Nile Red? Like, that's awesome. I'm on the same platform as Nile Red. Nebula is creator owned and a great way to support me, Dragon Time, the person talking to you. You can access everything on Nebula at go.nebula.tv/Glidus. No clue who that is, for only $3 a month with an annual subscription. Thanks, Nebula. Now let's get back to the full spoiler zone episode.
What happened in House of the Dragon Season 2?
Depending on who you ask, nothing. Or slightly more than nothing.
Yeah, we were promised war. At the end of Season 1, Rhaenyra looked to camera with fire in her eyes after the murder of her son Luke.
And blood in her veins.
And all of those things. And Season 2 was a bit of a surprise when it turned out to be very slow and introspective.
And contemplative and navel-gazing.
And most of the characters were avoiding war as opposed to fighting it.
Yeah.
Blood and cheese killed baby Jaehaerys. Aegon got betrayed and burned by his brother. Aemond hanged Dong. Criston and Gwaaaaaaayne were sad in the woods. HUGH and Ulf and Addam got dragons. Jace pouted.
Alicent and Rhaenyra were staring lovingly into each other's eyes.
Baela was there.
Mysaria spoke.
Daemon had visions with a witch from Scotland. Corlys and Alyn stood on the docks. Rhaena found a dragon. Shirako Lohard. All of those things. So I rewatched it for this conversation. I found that I really enjoyed the first two episodes. I think Season 2, Episode 2, Rhaenyra the Cruel, it might be my favorite Game of Thrones episode of any Game of Thrones show, actually.
That's crazy.
I know that's a big statement, but I really liked it a lot. And then I got quite frustrated in the middle segment. But anyway, we should say what this is about. So today...
Oh yeah, what are we doing?
We are talking about House of the Dragon, reflecting on Season 2 a bit, but we're speculating about what Season 3 and Season 4 are going to be like. Because there's 2 more seasons in this series. And based on what's on the books and based on what's happened in the show so far, we're going to talk about what might happen.
So this is going to be spoilerific. It's spoiler armor time.
We're finally in the spoiler dungeon. All through our conversations throughout Season 2, we were holding back our knowledge of what's in the books. And so there's all these things that we want to talk about, all these implications and possibilities. Because I don't know if you know this, but House of the Dragon has made some changes from the books, which are controversial.
Yeah, like Mysaria's accent. That's not in the books.
Yeah, no, some people have opinions on the changes that were made.
We might even be some of them.
Yes. George Martin, the author of the books, made some like very passive-aggressive blog posts about how... yeah, he's mad. The author is mad about some of the changes that have happened to the show. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to speculate on what's going to happen next, and it's going to be a fun time.
He is hoping.
Should we do like a summary of like every spoiler? Should we tell the people what's like, basically going to happen?
Open the fucking floodgates and off we go. Here's what happens.
All right.
Everyone dies.
Yeah, that's kind of the short version. It's very kind of Hamlet when you think about it. The way like everyone murders each other, and then like Cragen Stark walks in, like that Norwegian, and he just like, well,
guess I'm in charge now.
Yeah, exactly. If we're ready, I'm just going to do like a lightning quick summary of the rest of the story.
I'll be over here in the corner. You let me know when you're done.
All right. So after the sowing of the seeds and the blacks get the dragons, here's what happens. The Triarchy, Shiraka Lohar, they attack the black ships at the gullet. They capture Rhaenyra's little kid Viserys, and Jace, her eldest son, is killed. In the Red Fork, there's a battle, Rivermen versus Westermen. Jason Lannister is killed. Aemond takes the castle of Harrenhal and kills Simon Strong, R.I.P., and he hooks up with Alys Rivers. Rhaenyra will take King's Landing. She'll imprison Alicent and kill Otto, although Otto is doing something different in the TV show. Daemon and Aemond will kill each other gloriously at the God's Eye Lake near Harrenhal.
Oh, it's going to be so cool.
HUGH and Ulf are going to betray Rhaenyra. Awful battle at Tumbleton. Criston is going to die ignominiously in battle. Helaena is going to commit suicide for unclear reasons.
For no reason.
Yeah, George R. R. Martin in his blog said that in my book, she kills herself because her son Maelor was dead. But in the TV show, she doesn't have a son Maelor, so she kills herself for no reason,
We'll get to
All
it.
right, we're in the lightning round. The common people, they riot and they kill like 5 dragons at the storming of the Dragon Pit. The small folk, they create some rando bastard kings called Trystane and Gaemon, and they try to do a little people's revolution, which is pretty cool. HUGH and Addam and Daeron and the dragons, they all die at another terrible battle.
Oh, it's going to be so cool.
Bloodbath. Alfred Broom, for any Broom fans out there, Alfred's going to betray my Broomheads. Is going to betray Rhaenyra. He's going to Aegon is going to kill Maester Gerardus.
Not Gerardus.
Our favorite character Gerardus is going to be strangled by his own Maester's chain, and I'm not ready for that. Somehow Simon and Gerardus are the deaths I'm most
it's going to be so tragic.
About.
They're just the sweet old men in the show.
And then Aegon is going to kill Rhaenyra by feeding her to his dragon Sunfyre. And Sunfyre is going to fight Baela and her little dragon Moondancer. And Moondancer and Sunfyre are going to die. Alinda Massey's going to gouge her own eyes out.
Oh, Jesus, I don't know if the actress is ready for that one.
Can't wait for that. Mysaria is going to be killed painfully. Aegon II... despite like kind of winning the war, is ultimately going to be poisoned, probably by Larys Strong. And then, Cragen Stark's going to walk in and sort of mop things up and do some justice and then go home. And in the end, the king on the throne is going to be Rhaenyra's young son, Aegon the Younger, Aegon III. And he's going to marry Aegon II's daughter, Jaehaera. And they are both very unhappy and upset and traumatized. So the moral of the story is war is bad.
But incest is fine.
Yes, war bad, incest fine. That's the George R. R. Martin classic right there. So that is basically what happens for the rest of the dance in the books.
Yeah, in the book. We have no idea if any of that's going to happen in the show, but we're going to speak as though we do have an idea. Yeah. That's our goal with this conversation, is just to chat a bit about what season 3 and season 4 are going to look like, how it might compare to the books, because they are making changes. I mean, the biggest divergences from the books in season 2 is probably like Alicent trying to make peace with Rhaenyra and offering for her son Aegon to die and wanting to leave Westeros. That's very different, because in the books, Alicent is like, fuck Rhaenyra, I want to win this war. Like, Alicent is unfriendly. What's another change? Rhaena seems to get a dragon, probably the dragon Sheep Stealer, whereas in the books there's a different character called Nettles who gets Sheep Stealer. Otto has left King's Landing, whereas in the book he's still there.
Yeah. There's also Maelor, the third child of Aegon and Helaena, who is not in the show, whereas in the book he has a bit of a role. So there's a bunch of changes, and we'll talk about how they might impact the long term. And our close personal friend George R. R. Martin has had a few words to say about Maelor.
And then he unsaid them.
Yeah, George R. R. Martin wrote a very upset blog post on his blog about how angry he is that the House of the Dragon TV show removed Maelor and has Sheepstealer in the Vale. And yeah, he then deleted the blog post because I suppose people told him he was...
This is speculation. We have no idea why he deleted the post. It could have been for any reason.
Yeah, but there was a bit of a hubbub in any case.
Yeah.
So what's George so angry about, Gladys?
Well, toxic butterflies is the way he put it. He's a very poetic man, isn't he?
Yeah.
So the way he saw it, removing Maelor from Blood and Cheese, mechanically, the event can function fine without Maelor.
Yeah.
But there are all of these carry-on effects from that cascade into what George considers a monumental failure of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Because George's blog post details how we get from Maelor is still alive to Helaena kills herself.
Yeah.
Maelor exists to Helaena kills herself. Because there's this whole horrible, tragic way that Maelor dies later on with Rickard Thorne. Rickard Thorne is there.
Yeah, there's a kerfuffle at Bitterbridge and little baby Maelor gets killed and Rhaenyra gets blamed for it and that like feeds the riots against her that leads to her downfall.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that's attributed in the books to Helena's eventual suicide.
It's funny, though, because in his blog post, George said, as though it's definitive, that the death of Maelor is why Helaena killed herself. Whereas,
this is what I take great umbrage with. Like, I love George R.R. Martin. We would not be here if not for his fantastic work.
Yeah, of
I
course.
disagree with him on the meaning of what he wrote in his book.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think his what he said is questionable about Sheepstealer because like he wrote this very weird, like long detailed blog post about how dragons are not nomadic and a dragon would not just go and make a lair somewhere else. The dragon would stay on Dragonstone and at the Dragonpit in King's Landing. And like it's weird because he's complaining about like dragon behavior, but what he's really complaining about is the fact that Rhaena is claiming Sheepstealer and Nettles is being cut.
Yeah.
That's what he's really angry about,
Yeah.
but he doesn't want to say that because he doesn't want to like spoil anything in like a definitive way. And so he says all these things about dragon behavior that I don't think actually line up with what happens in the books. Because in the books, Drogon flies off from Meereen and makes a lair in the Dothraki Sea.
Silverwing goes to Red Lake and makes a lair there. Red Lake is on the other side of the continent.
Yeah. So I think that some of the things that George says about both Maelor and about dragon behavior actually is not consistent with what's in his books. So
it might be consistent with what's in his head.
Yeah.
But that's not what's in the book. So it's very interesting that we have a situation where we're like sort of contending with the author's headcanon. Like it's like
Yeah, Pottermore, when J.K. Rowling is like, yes, wizards like to poop themselves.
Yeah,
and then the entire fandom's like, oh.
I interrupted when we were talking about why Helaena dies. In the book Fire and Blood, there are a number of... This happens all the time in Fire and Blood.
Yeah.
There's a number of supposed causes that are suggested for why this event takes place.
Yeah.
And this is like the trend of the book. It's a historical fucking fiction novel told by a future person looking back on the accounts of people who were there / weren't there / were making stuff up / weren't making stuff up. And it's a confusing mess. And so one of the things is, maybe Helaena was upset because she found out her son was brutally murdered. And that's why she threw herself from the keep and impaled herself on the spikes below. But there's also all these other reasons given. Yeah. And George's blog post, the like context of it is that we're supposed to assume that that is the reason Helaena kills herself, when that's like not what's in the book.
Yeah, yeah. So these blog posts are complaining at length about fucking dragon behavior and Maelor's death. But like as George says, those particular points aren't really what he's angry about. He's not really so much angry about missing Maelor and Sheepstealer. He's angry about the on-flow effects, the toxic butterflies, the butterfly effect of how those changes are going to affect the later seasons. And it becomes really clear from his blog posts that what he's mad about are the future plans that the showrunner and the writers have for season 3 and season 4. And you can definitely see how, like, if Rhaena is claiming the dragon sheep stealer instead of Nettles, that means that Nettles isn't in the story, and that massively affects Daemon's story. And so I think those are some of the kinds of impacts that George is really angry about, but that he doesn't feel able to discuss. And clearly, like, there's been a breakdown in the relationship between George and HBO and George and the showrunners, and these stories are George's babies, and he wants them to be adapted faithfully, and he's angry at the changes that are being made.
It's very sad. I don't like any of this.
Yeah, I feel like my dads are fighting. Yeah. Like, I really like George Martin and I really like Ryan Condal. Like, I think that Ryan and the Hot D team want to make the best show that they can. They also are under pressure from HBO because there's all these reports about budget cuts. And we've talked about all this shit before. We don't need to relitigate it. But I hope they can figure this out, and I hope that they can make this show work. I really hope that they have enough episodes to do it, because it's been confirmed that it's going to be just 2 more seasons, season 3 and season 4, and it has not yet been confirmed how many episodes these seasons will have, but some people are speculating that it's going to be 8-episode seasons again.
I think it's a reasonable speculation. I don't think that HBO is going to suddenly come into $100 million more to throw at House of the Dragon.
And I think as we will find, 16 episodes is not very many episodes to do all the things that need to be done and could be done. I mean, you heard the recap I gave. Like, that's just scratching the surface on the number of things that happen in this book that could and should be included. So I'm sure George is upset about that as well.
Yeah, and he's directing, the blog post made it seem as though he's directing that frustration at Ryan Condal specifically, or the writing staff specifically.
It's pretty fucking brutal the way he named Ryan specifically in his criticism. That's, I think, part of the emotional impetus here is that I think clearly there's been a breakdown in that relationship.
Yes,
which is really
very sad. Very sad.
Yeah.
And did Ryan do something personally to George, or is it just the kick-ons of the effects of having to make the show in the way that the industry needed it to be made? I don't know.
If I was naming names, I'd name David Zaslav, but of course
I mean, it's easy to throw the faceless CEO under the bus, isn't it?
Someone's got to stick up for the faceless CEOs.
Yeah, man. Someone's got to really... Those billionaires.
All those goddamn writers sucking up all the power, taking the power away from those. All right. Yeah. So look, I mean, we don't know the details of this situation, so we don't want to speculate about it too much more. But that's the sort of elephant in the room. We feel obliged to address some of what's going on there.
George says that Ryan's plot, which by the way hasn't been written yet, or hadn't been written at the time that he published the blog post, right? There was still... Season 3 has not been written yet, but George says that in Ryan's version of the story, Helaena kills herself for no reason. I think that that's a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why Helaena might kill herself, and not just Maelor.
Just because it can't match what happens in George's version of the story that's in his head, the one of the many ways it could have happened in the book that he has chosen is the correct one. It doesn't mean that the writers can't account for it.
Yeah, I do find it kind of bizarre and surreal that George Martin is complaining at length about seasons of television that have not been made, that we cannot see. It's like, how do we process criticism of something that we haven't seen and does not yet exist?
Yeah.
Season 3 and season 4 could turn out differently than whatever early plans were discussed. It feels personal to me, and and this is public information. Read George Martin's recent blog posts. He's really upset. He's had a really bad couple of years personally and professionally. A lot of his best friends have died in the last few years, and you can read about that on his blog post, and that's part of the context of what's going on here, I think.
There's also the context of, visiting Tolkien's grave, and the concept of legacy of an artist is really weighing on his mind at the moment.
Yeah.
And, he's thinking about how Game of Thrones, the monumental adaptation of his magnum opus, kind of shat over everything he did.
And of course, there's the specter of the Winds of Winter, the unfinished upcoming book in the main book series. He still hasn't finished his opus, and that is also hanging over his head. So all of this is context, I think, as to why he's making these negative posts. And of course, also it is extremely legitimate to criticize the season because there is a lot that's wrong with the season.
Yeah. It's not perfect.
Yeah, it's far from it. So yeah, I have very mixed feelings about all of this. I still love House of the Dragon for its flaws, and I still love A Song of Ice and Fire and George and Ryan. There's also the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Hedge Knight, Dunk and Egg show coming up, which has about 3 different titles. We're going to have to decide what we're calling it.
We'll have to just like abbreviate it to HBO's Akotska.
Akotska, yes, of course. Hbo Kotska.
Hebo Akotska.
And George Martin has said very positive things about it, but it's hard not to see a cycle happening here, right?
Indeed.
Because George
he was
Martin
very happy about House of the Dragon early on.
Yeah, dude, like 9 months ago, George was effusively positive. Even while House of the Dragon Season 2 was airing, George was posting very positive things about House of the Dragon Season 2. He said that Season 2, Episode 1 and 2 were great, really positive. It was during the airing of Season 2 that George Martin started becoming negative.
He started voicing his concerns.
Yeah, so yeah, I have very mixed feelings, but that's not what we're talking about today. I would like to talk about House of the Dragon Season 3 and Season 4.
Spoiler time. It's time to get your speculation hats on, everyone.
Get your speculation spectacles on, because we're dragoning.
Wow. I would love to hear your top 10 unhinged House of the Dragon predictions.
I'm so glad
excited.
you asked.
I'm so excited to hear these from you.
All right, this is going to be kind of rapid fire. So this is all wild speculation about House of the Dragon Season 3 and Season 4. Stuff that is not in the books, stuff that there's no proof of any of this happening, but I think that these are all interesting possibilities.
This is what Alt Schwift X thinks the show might be leaning towards.
Yes. Number 1, I think that Alicent will poison her son, Aegon II.
I don't think that's an unhinged prediction. I think that that's like really in line with where the show's going.
Yeah, this is the most vanilla of the list. I have seen other people saying this as well. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it like fits with her rejecting Aegon at the end of Season 2. Taking moral responsibility, doing something fucked up for the greater good, and Larys could be her instrument in this. That'd be a
really interesting development of the Alicent-Larys relationship, which has been quite turbulent so far.
Number 2, I think that Daemon Targaryen will rescue Otto Hightower from the Bees Breeze. And then Otto Hightower will poison Ulf the White.
Otto poisoning Ulf makes complete sense to me because Hobart Hightower is dead in the show canon.
Number 3, I think that Otto will hold HUGH's wife, Kat, hostage to force HUGH to betray Rhaenyra at Tumbleton.
I guess that makes sense.
Because why else would nice guy HUGH do that?
Yeah, why would they give HUGH a wife in the show when like no mention of that is made in the books?
Why would HUGH burn his wife's brother's town?
Yeah, okay. I really like that, giving like a personal impetus for the betrayal.
Number 4, Mysaria will feel betrayed by Rhaenyra because Rhaenyra will fail to protect the common people. And so Mysaria and Sylvi will instigate the riots in King's Landing that lead to the storming of the Dragon Pit and the death of Rhaenyra's dragon.
When are these going to get unhinged? You told me these would be unhinged. This is just like watching the show.
They're becoming less hinged.
Okay.
Next one. All right, Sylvi and Mysaria.
This one's unhinged.
Will then go on to play the role of Sylvi, and Essie with Gaemon. So for those who haven't read the books, this is like the socialist, sex worker, gay people's revolution that like rises up and demands justice and change. And I think that the figurehead they use as their king is Gaemon Palehair, who is alleged to be the son of Aegon, Tom Glencarny. And I think that Mysaria will reveal that Gaemon is Aegon's son because Mysaria worked in the brothels and she might know who Aegon was having sex with.
Mm-hmm.
Next one.
And Sylvie's going to be Sylvana. Honestly, it's not that unhinged.
And Essie could even be Diana. Next one. Rhaena and Sheepstealer will save Rhaenyra's young son Aegon the Younger at the Gullet and might even die in the process.
Rhaena and Sheepstealer might die at the Gullet?
Yes.
That one is unhinged to me. That makes no fucking sense.
Rhaena has to redeem herself for her failure to protect the sons that Rhaenyra entrusted her with.
But Rhaena's so important after the dance is over.
I mean, is she? She marries a Corbray.
Yeah, that's mega important,
wears mourning as a scarf.
Who else is going to marry a Corbray?
All right, number 7. All right, here's an unhinged one. Alys.
Thematically, it's important.
Alys is a green man. So when Daemon and Aemond kill each other and they sink into the god's eye, the old gods swallowing the fire, Alys will like put on sunglasses, transform her true form as a Green Man, and walk away in slow motion, having orchestrated the death of Aemond, partly as revenge for Aemond's crimes burning the Riverlands, which Alys complained about to Daemon. And so she will have destroyed two of the most monstrous, fiery, destructive assholes in the world. And she's done it through magical manipulation and visions.
Okay, I like the vibe, but not necessarily do I agree with the mechanics of what you just said.
Number 8. Larys is going to choose to be executed because he knows that he'll live a second life, skin changed as a rat, king rat.
That rat is worthy of a king's second life.
Oh, here's the best one. Orwyle will poison the last dragon eggs. Because in the book, there's a bit where Aegon II, Tom Glencarny, he wants a new dragon after the death of Sunfyre. And the book says that the maesters at Dragonstone selected some eggs for Aegon to try and hatch, and none of them hatched.
Well, okay, so that is one explanation for that. The other explanation would be that the Dragon Keepers are no longer tending to these are just like nerdy maces who don't actually know that much about dragons trying to do a dragon thing, and it just doesn't work because they suck at it.
I've got a bonus one for you.
Ooh, bonus.
Just thought Gwaaaaaaayne's going to kill Criston.
I don't know if I don't like that.
They're going to change Gwaaaaaaayne because Gwaaaaaaayne dies in King's Landing as a gold cloak in the book.
And he's probably not going to be in King's Landing.
All right, my other one, Caraxes is going to die at the Harrenhal Weirwood tree. And his blood will feed the roots, and it'll be like a blood sacrifice.
Like during the battle, after the battle, Caraxes is going to like crawl out of the lake and he'll make it to the I guess there's a reason they positioned the Weirwood on the edge of the lake.
And I think they mentioned Caraxes crawling out of the lake in the book somewhere. So.
Okay. No, I quite like that.
All right, so those are my top 11 unhinged House of the Dragon predictions.
The thing with Alys, Greenseer, Blood Sacrifice, Aemond, Daemon, Old Gods, Booyah, motherfuckers is like, to what end? Like, what happens next? What does Alys gain from, I mean, other than the death of these monstrous men? Like, what does it do for her?
I mean, the funny thing with Alys is that she has all this stuff that happens in the books.
Oh my God,
afterwards.
It's Gale Rankin.
And what Alys does after the Dance with the Dragons is that she takes over Harrenhal and she becomes this witch queen who seems quite villainous. So, like, she allegedly tortures and murders a bunch of people, and she claims to be pregnant. She births who she claims to be the bastard son of Aemond and, like, the rightful king and whatever. And we don't actually know what happens to her in the end because George hasn't finished writing the story.
No way, bro.
I know, you won't believe it. So Alys is like kind of sinister and villainous in the books, or at least seems that way. Whereas in the Hot D, she's like a humanitarian who's like, don't hurt the Riverlands people. Which I feel like fits this thing that the show does with a lot of characters where like the women are whitewashed into being ethical and sympathetic, whereas the men are turned into more villainous and they are responsible for all of the war.
Generally, yeah.
Which I feel becomes a bit boring. Like it's not exactly subtle about like the gender message when all the bad guys are men and the women are all positive. It
also might not be the most productive gender message to put forward.
Yeah, it sort of lacks depth when if it just gets boiled down to men bad, women good.
I would like in the future for the show to have, you know, more variance across those lines.
Yeah. And that's something that sort of continues. Like, I mean, in the book, there's all this stuff explicitly about how, you know, it's the women who make the peace in the end. But
is it actually? Because doesn't Cregan Stark come in and basically like clean everything up?
Yeah, I think Cregan's justice is part of it, but there's definitely lots of women who help make the peace, like the Three Widows and Baela and Rhaenyra, and like is Cregan's peace facilitated by the Blackwood? But I think part of the point of the gender thing in the books is that it's the women who make the peace, but it's also the women who started the war, because unlike in Hot D, Rhaenyra and Alicent absolutely want to rip each other's throats out for the entirety of the dance. So it doesn't have this simplistic women good, men bad thing. It has this Rhaenyra and Alicent are part of this horrible, villainous, destructive war, but then it takes good people afterwards to end it. And like obviously this show is like very self-consciously about gender, so it's going to be really interesting seeing how they handle that and how they manage that. And I really feel like there's such an opportunity here for Mysaria and Diana and Sylvi to turn against Rhaenyra and to be her downfall. I think that's such a great opportunity
Yeah, instead of it always being the men who betray people and go back behind people's backs and scheme, like these three disempowered women orchestrating the downfall of another woman who has become a tyrant.
Because it's about patriarchy, but it's also about class, and it's about bastardy, and it's about feudalism, and it's about power.
I mean, the concept of patriarchal oppression isn't just men bad.
Yeah.
It's so much more complicated than that.
I've heard this word called intersectionality, but I'm gonna try and stay in my lane. So the point is, it'll be interesting how they develop the gender theme, and there's a lot of opportunities on how they can do that really well, I feel. Shall we talk about Rhaenyra for a bit?
Who's that?
Yeah, so...
Can you bring up a picture of Rhaenyra so I know who you're talking about?
Well...
I'm so lost already.
I'm glad you asked. Here's Rhaenyra.
Oh, that one.
That one. So Rhaenyra, for me, was one of the frustrations of Hot D Season 2 because she kept threatening to do something but didn't. It really seemed like she was going to go out and try and wreak revenge against the Greens, but she never did.
Yeah, forgive me for I have sinned. I was looking through the YouTube comments in our...
Oh, no.
I know. I'm sorry.
Why do you cause such pain to yourself?
And I saw myself a few months ago replying to someone being like, man, it's a bit frustrating that Rhaenyra is still dragging her feet. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the last time we're going to see any hesitancy from Rhaenyra. That was episode 3.
Yeah. Yeah. When you rewatch it, it really highlights that it's like, damn, Rhaenyra just fucking stood on the council doing nothing for a really long time. Which like I've said before, like she is being like ethical and realistic by trying not to do a war. I like that and I get that. But it didn't feel like she had enough of an arc. And I know, again, I've said it before, but like the sowing of the seeds really felt like she was seizing fire and seizing power. But episode 8 undercut all of that by her being hesitating again with Mysaria.
Yeah,
She said that she'd attack Lannisport in Old Town, but that plan made no sense and we didn't actually see it happen and it won't happen. So it's like...
That scene between Rhaenyra and Mysaria just drives me up the wall.
Yeah, the episode would have been so much better without that scene, in my opinion. And also, like I just thought back to like the council scenes in Game of Thrones, right? I looked back to the small council scenes with like Ned and Littlefinger and Varys.
Tyrion council scenes.
Tywin and Cersei.
Juicy shit.
Those scenes slap.
They're the best part of Game of Thrones.
Now, compare those council scenes with House of the Dragon Season 2, Rhaenyra, Alfred Broom, and Bartimaeus Celtigar. What a fucking downgrade, man. That is so much less interesting.
Allegedly.
So much less dynamic.
Allegedly, Corlys Velaryon is on the council, I guess.
Oh, that was one of the most underwhelming moments in Hot D Season 2 when Rhaenyra is like, we've got to bring Corlys back. You know, Baela, you got to go and bring Corlys.
We have to make him my hand.
And
he's going to fix everything if I make him my hand. And then he shows up the next episode and he's like, hey.
Corlys walks in, he's like, this council of ditherers, what are we doing? But then they just do nothing.
They
it's
continue
like, what the
to
fuck?
do nothing. It's so fucking annoying. And like the structure is there. Episode 3, Rhaenyra does the most insane, ridiculous thing in an attempt to prevent the war. She sneaks into King's Landing to have a personal chat with Alicent.
Yeah.
This is the last thing she can do to prevent war. And then she can commit to doing the war, confident that she has tried everything else.
Yeah.
But she just does nothing for 3 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why that like episode 4, episode 5 bit is a real painful stretch for me.
Like she sends Rhaenys to Rook's Rest because it's happening. Like she is absolved of doing that combat.
Yeah.
It's not a choice on her part. It's frustrating. Rhaenyra is very frustrating this season.
But the thing that really, the crazy thing is that I think it could have worked if they had another 2 episodes. Because I think that where this is leading is that when Rhaenyra's son Jace dies in the Gullet, Rhaenyra is then finally going to become angry and vengeful and actually take more action. Maybe she won't be as intense as she is in the books, maybe, but there actually will be some character growth and some change and some action. And they they were going to do that. The original plan for Hot D Season 2 was to have the Battle of the Gullet and the death of Jace in Season 2, but they moved it to Season 3 because of HBO's budget cuts and the change to 8 episodes. So it's a fucking tragedy to me that like, I think so much of this could have been forgiven. So much of the boring, frustrating council scenes could have been forgiven if season 2 ended with an actual finale, the finale that was planned, the finale that was promised.
The finale that ever was.
Because they could have had season 2, episode 9, Death of Jace at the Gullet, and then season 2, episode 10, The Fall of King's Landing.
Yep.
Rhaenyra could have responded to her son's death by getting on her dragons, putting aside her hesitation, and taking the capital. That would have been a good finale.
Yeah, and like I really like the scene in episode 8 where Rhaenyra's at Harrenhal and Daemon swears his actual loyalty to her this time.
Yeah.
But it's sort of weird that Rhaenyra flies from Dragonstone to Harrenhal and then back to Dragonstone. It's like this strange detour logistically and physically.
Flying past King's Landing to get to Harrenhal.
And that makes sense if that happens at King's Landing. If Daemon's finale, Rhaenyra's finale, is reuniting together at King's Landing, affirming, hey, we are doing this together.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like Rhaenyra season 2 could have been so much better. But what's going to happen next? So, like, season 3...
Yeah, where do we go from here?
Season 3, she takes King's Landing, and in the books, Rhaenyra has this, like, slow, ugly downfall where she becomes paranoid, Ulf and HUGH turn against her, she drives away Addam, she tries to kill Nettles, who is Daemon's lover / daughter figure.
Question mark. That's another one of those frustrating things. It's just like, oh, can you just tell us, man? Can you just be straightforward for once?
Yeah, well, Hot D could have been the answer to who Nettles is.
Yeah,
but
it turns out the answer is she doesn't even fucking exist.
Yeah.
She was made up.
So yeah, Rhaenyra has this like downfall where basically the people turn against her and everyone turns against her and she sort of loses her mind a bit and she ultimately has to flee King's Landing amidst riots. And I think it's satisfying in the book because it's partly the result of her own hubris, vengefulness, paranoia, but it's also about political failures. There's this really important bit where Rhaenyra has to deal with Rosby and Stokeworth because she takes down the lords of Rosby and Stokeworth and she has to decide who the new lords of Rosby and Stokeworth are. And she has the option of potentially giving Rosby and Stokeworth to the daughters of those lords. And potentially marrying them to HUGH and Ulf is Daemon's suggestion. But she ultimately decides not to give those lordships to women. She instead gives them to men. And so that flies in the face of trying to make political change because Rhaenyra in Hot D season 1 says, I will make a new order. Yep. Like the implication is that Rhaenyra is going to upend the patriarchy and allow women to inherit ahead of men.
And you see inklings of this like betrayal of that ideology throughout season 2 when she sends Rhaena to be a mother to her children in the Vale. Hey, you're not going to serve a role in the war. Your purpose is to be a mother.
Yeah, the exact thing that young Rhaenyra tried to avoid.
And I really like that foreshadowing of where Rhaenyra is actually going.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's really important for Hot D especially. Like it's kind of a minor point in the books, but Hot D has made itself about the patriarchy. And the question is Rhaenyra going to continue this sexist power structure or is Rhaenyra going to change the power structure to make it more fair for women? That's a really important central question. And Rosby and Stokeworth is where Rhaenyra fails to make the change. And so I think that they should make a big deal of that in the show. And I think that they should have Mysaria potentially as one of the people saying, hey, you should give it to the women. Let's make change. Let's make things more fair. And Rhaenyra will fail to do that, and I think that it would be really cool if Mysaria then turned against Rhaenyra as a result.
You know who else could be a really cool person to be wrapped up in this scandal? Alicent. Like if Alicent is like, hey, Rhaenyra, I thought that we were doing this to, you know, like the liberation of women. I thought that like the whole purpose of your campaign is to enfranchise women politically. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
I thought that we talked about, like you talked to me about this when you were 14 years old.
Yeah. And that is like a very real and relatable tragedy, right? Is like wanting to fix injustice but becoming a part of the injustice, like political realities forcing Rhaenyra to become the very power structure that she wanted to bring down. This is a political show and this is an opportunity for them to engage with some really interesting ideas, I feel. And yeah, I'm glad you bring up Alicent because Alicent's going to be so fucking funny because like Alicent's role for the entire rest of this series is to be a prisoner.
Around King's Landing like, oh, I'm fucking stuck here.
Alicent spends the rest of the story just as a prisoner at the Red Keep. And so the question is like, what are they doing? Because Like, in the books, Alicent becomes not very important for the rest of the story, but in the show, they've chosen to make Alicent and Rhaenyra the two protagonists. So it's like, what are they going to do with Alicent? And I think making Alicent like a sort of a tense, fractious confidant of Rhaenyra, you know, prisoner / kind of lover / advisor /
What a
enemy.
crazy dynamic.
Yeah, I think that the writers would love to have some fascinatingly complicated relationship there between Rhaenyra and Alicent as her prisoner. So yeah, I think there's a lot of cool opportunities there, and yeah, I would also love to see like a fracture between Mysaria and Rhaenyra, which is partly a political fracture because of Rhaenyra's failure to make change, but also a personal fracture because they macked and also like one of the things in the books is that Daemon and Mysaria start hooking up again, and Rhaenyra apparently allows this and is cool with this.
Is what we're told.
Yeah, and like I don't think that they'll do that because Mysaria seems so done with Daemon at this point.
Anti-Daemon club.
So, you know, so potentially like maybe Mysaria will turn against Rhaenyra because Rhaenyra accepts Daemon back, and maybe that creates a rift with Mysaria. So like there could be like personal and romantic and political tension there, which I think could all be really interesting.
Well, this franchise has always been best when those things are wrapped up together.
Yes. So yeah, all sorts of political relationship, gender shit. It all of this has potential. I think this could fucking slap. And of course, the storming of the Dragonpit and Rhaenyra's young son Joffrey dies, and she loses a dragon Syrax, and that all leads to her fleeing King's Landing and going to Dragonstone. So that could be like the end of the season for Rhaenyra, I imagine.
Of season 3.
Yeah. And yeah, in the end, Rhaenyra is betrayed by Alfred Broom, and she gets bamboozled by Larys, and Aegon kills her, which is funny because that might be the first scene between Aegon and Rhaenyra.
Yeah, they've never spoken in the show.
Won't it be so funny if like the two figureheads of this war meet and talk for the first time on screen
in season 4,
just at the very end when Aegon kills Rhaenyra? That'll be crazy.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like so much can be unpacked in that final conversation.
Yeah.
That is also their first conversation. Is there going to be an Alfred section later, or do we talk about him now that we've brought him up?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about him whenever.
Okay, because I just wanted to touch briefly on the foreshadowing of Alfred Broom's betrayal.
Yeah.
Because knowing what's going to happen, when that came up in this season, I was like, that's a bit heavy, don't you think? You know, when Rhaenyra sends him off to Harrenhal to treat with Daemon, she's like, and I know you would never support the Hightower claim. And he's like, yes, I would die before I support the Hightower claim.
Yeah,
and then when he walks into the Godswood with Daemon in episode 8 and the tree's like, traitor. and he's like, oh, who said that?
Yeah.
I thought that was like, come on, guys. But I can understand, like, both of those things sort of make sense without the future knowledge. And maybe if you don't know what's going to happen, it doesn't feel heavy-handed. And it's one of those neat things that you look back on in retrospect, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's possibilities about how they do it. I think it's possible that, like, Larys will get in Alfred's ear.
I would really like it if it was just a choice he made on his own. Like,
Yeah.
he just saw what was happening and was like, I sort of have to do something about this. Like, I just don't really vibe with Rhaenyra anymore.
In the book, it says that Alfred is mad that he wasn't made the Castellan of Dragonstone.
That seems like a really, like, weird little personal gripe.
And Alfred is really brutal in his betrayal of Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
Like, he really, like, viciously murders a bunch of the people in Dragonstone. So it really feels, like, intensely personal, which feels quite different to Hot D. Like, in Hot D, I think Alfred doesn't hate Rhaenyra. He's just genuinely frustrated by her political inaction.
He's an audience stand-in in that way.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Alfred is a dick, but, like, he's got some
right.
good points. Like, he's not wrong that Rhaenyra is failing to act. So they could do this in quite an interesting way to make, you know, Alfred, you know, betraying our protagonist, but maybe not in an entirely wrong way.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean,
is Rhaenyra going to be our protagonist still at that point?
Yeah. Rhaenyra may take a dark turn by then. And you can make the argument that Alfred is ending the war.
Yeah.
By helping to kill Rhaenyra, he's ending a war that's killing thousands. So there's something heroic about that potentially. So yeah, I agree. Alfred could be really interesting.
I hope that they come up with a more interesting motivation for his heel turn than, oh, you didn't make me Castellan of Dragonstone.
Yeah. So, yeah, it could be really interesting and way more interesting than the books. And in general, I feel like Rhaenyra is way more interesting than in the books. I mean, most of the characters in the books feel quite static. Like Rhaenyra and Alicent both for the entirety of the dance. They hate each other. They want to kill each other. They want to win the war. There isn't much of an arc in the books. Whereas in the show, I think it's good that they've actually given them an arc by showing how they grew up and where they came from, how the relationships evolved, and how I think they have a great opportunity to take Rhaenyra on a believable downward spiral, both politically and personally. I worry that they might not do it.
Yeah,
I worry that they might want Rhaenyra to be totally sympathetic the whole time.
Yeah, we might be sniffing her farts until the very end.
Yeah, and I think that would be a failure. If they try to make Rhaenyra and Alicent both likable and sympathetic and peace-loving the whole time, they've failed the story. And maybe that's one of the things that they're planning, and maybe that's one of the things George is mad about.
I would be mad about that too.
Yeah.
I think Rhaenyra needs to be dislikable towards the end.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm enjoying the performance.
Emma's wonderful.
Season 2 is frustrating. I think that they do have great opportunities if they play it right. What do you think about Jace?
You said you didn't really care for Harry Collette that much.
He is one of my less favorite performances.
No, I quite enjoyed him in my rewatch.
I don't know, man. I think I was put off by his Cregan scenes at the start of the season. I feel like those were some of the weaker scenes in the season.
It was a strange way to start it, but like, where else do you put those scenes, I guess?
I do think that like Jace's character makes sense with like his insecurity around his identity, and I think it was a smart idea to make him upset about the dragon seeds getting dragons.
Yeah, I really like the way that that's flipped around from the book.
I'm sure that confused some viewers because it is kind of a subtle needle to thread that Jace does want highborn people to claim dragons, but he doesn't want lowborn people to claim dragons because he's secretly a bastard.
Yeah, like he can't have dragon seeds claim dragons because it completely undermines him.
Yeah. But I think that they did a fantastic job of setting up that tension between Jace and Rhaenyra by Jace asking Rhaenyra not to do the dragon seeds, but she does it anyway. Like I think, and also, you know, just the simple personal relationship of, you know, this boy wants to prove himself and his mother wants to protect him.
And this all to me is building up to Jace running off to fight in the gullet without Rhaenyra's instruction.
And I think that, you know, Jace, it's an expression of Jace's desperation to prove himself. And I think Rhaenyra could feel guilt.
All of the young people in this show, and from season 1 as well, like they're just driven by this need to prove themselves.
Partly because this political system demands it.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the other tragedies of removing the gullet from this season is that the narrative momentum, like it would have been a perfect climax. The death of Jace would be...
it's such a neat little bow, isn't it?
Because they built up the tension between Jace and Rhaenyra so well. And the relationship between Jace and Baela was good as well. And having Jace die at the start of season 3, in 2 years from now when it comes out, people will have forgotten that emotional narrative momentum. And I don't think the death of Jace will hit as hard at the start of season 3 as it would have at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty
like imagine
big
if the
fuck up.
Red Wedding had happened at the start of season 4 of Game of Thrones. Like what are you talking about? Of course not.
So I've got a few sort of thoughts about some of the specific like how will the gullet go down?
Sure.
Is an interesting question. Like the books sort of speculate on how Jace dies. Like, you know, was the dragon pulled under or was he hit by an arrow or whatever? And I thought maybe it'd be fun if Jace tries to save his little half brother Viserys, or Aegon, and like dies trying, or maybe, you know, I like Baela and maybe even Rhaena might also fight at the gullet.
Yep.
Unlike the books, because they're trying to give Baela something to do.
I think that Rhaena showing up out of nowhere at the gullet does make sense.
That would slap.
Because like in episode 8, we're left on this cliffhanger where she bumps into a dragon and it's like, oh, what's going to happen from here? And then the next time we see her, she's coming in out of nowhere to save the day, except it fucking doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Maybe Sheepstealer kills Vermax. Who knows?
Holy shit. Well, yeah, that's the other thing is that like Rhaena is claiming a wild dragon.
Yeah, and she's never ridden a dragon before. The only interaction she's had with dragons is almost being eaten by sea smoke.
Yeah, and we've seen how Aemond struggles to control Vhagar. And Luke struggles to control Arax. So of course Rhaena is going to struggle to control Sheepstealer. The books say that the wild dragons are harder to control than the Dragonpit dragons and stuff. So
I was just spitballing there. I would hate it if it was another fucking misunderstanding, dragon lack of control. Oh no one meant for Jace to die. No, I want someone to have meant to kill Jace.
yeah, I agree. I don't want everything to be an accident, but I think that someone failing to control their dragon absolutely will happen and be a big deal. I think that Ulf and Hugh are some of the obvious options.
Maybe Rhaena could have the opportunity to save Jace and just like not have it in her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they are cooking with Rhaena because, I mean, Rhaenyra told Rhaena to look after her kids and Rhaena abandoned them. Like, Rhaenyra had this line about, this is like the hope of the future of our family, and Rhaena fucking abandoned them. Yep. So I think that Rhaena's going to have to face consequences, and I think that the death of Aegon's dragon Stormcloud, little Aegon, and the capture of little Viserys, Rhaena's got to feel responsible for that. Rhaenyra's got to be angry about that. It's like the price for the dragon.
That sounds like an irreconcilable rift between those two people. Maybe Rhaena like latches onto Daemon and drags him away from, like tries to drag him away from Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
In the same way that Nettles drags Daemon away from Rhaenyra, or at least from Rhaenyra's point of view, Nettles drags Daemon away from her.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big questions, isn't it? Like,
how is Rhaena going to fill the Nettles role in the book?
Yes. Because in the book, there's this whole sort of weird relationship that happens between Daemon and Nettles, who's like this young bastard rando peasant girl who claims a dragon. And we don't know if they're having sex or if he's like a surrogate father to her.
Or
like,
actual father.
Yeah, there's a million possibilities. And it's like, if they've removed Nettles from the show and it's Rhaena instead, is Rhaena gonna have this weird relationship with Daemon instead? Like, I don't think so. Because it's such a different vibe. Like, it feels like Daemon... Because what ultimately happens is that Mysaria convinces Rhaenyra that Daemon is betraying her by having sex with Nettles, and Rhaenyra orders Nettles to be assassinated, and it seems like that turns Daemon against Rhaenyra, and then he goes off and dies on the God's Eye.
Honestly, that could be Rhaena.
Yeah?
Rhaenyra could order Rhaena's... I don't know how, but it could happen.
Yeah, but it's not like Rhaena and Daemon are going to be having sex.
No,
so there's got to be a very different reason.
There's every reason to believe that in the book, Daemon and Nettles weren't having sex.
Here's the other thing about the gullet. So Rhaenyra's kid, Aegon the Younger, in the books, escapes from the Battle of the Gullet on his little dragon Stormcloud, who then dies of wounds.
Yeah, we saw Stormcloud in season 2, and he does not look rideable.
Yeah, he's teeny tiny.
Yeah. So
they're going to have to change that. I mean, I guess there's no confirmation in the show that little hatchling dragon is Stormcloud.
That might have been Tyraxes, yeah.
Could be Tyraxes. I think we all assume that it's Stormcloud because it's colored like a Stormcloud. But I mean, even the colors of those dragons, I think, are unconfirmed in the books. So I guess it's possible that Stormcloud is big. But I mean, even Aegon is like super young and tiny compared to the books as well.
Yeah,
so
it's a toddler. He's toddling.
And that's sort of why I think that it could potentially be Rhaena and Sheepstealer or Baela and Moondancer.
Yeah, someone's going to have to save that kid.
Yeah, so that's another possibility.
Other things going down at the Gullet, Shirako Loha, Tyland Lannister.
Yeah, do you think that Shirako will kill Jace with one of her 17 knives?
Maybe not with one of her knives, but I think, like why else introduce us to Shirako Loha?
Like Euron Greyjoy with the scorpion bolt?
Now that you say that.
there's a risk of it being too wacky because Shirako's been established as this comedic character. Tyland also has been established as a comedic character.
I know, there was also a very dangerous part to Shirako's character.
Yeah. Yeah, so look, I think the Gullet could slap. I think the death of Jace works for Rhaenyra's arc and her relationship, and like Baela's gonna be mad, and I think that Corlys and Alyn could potentially feel like they failed at the Gullet, and also like Driftmark is gonna be like burned and sacked to shit by the Triarchy, which is gonna hurt Corlys. So I think the Gullet could slap. I think it would have slapped 10 times more if it was at the end of season 2 instead of the start of season 3, but I think it could work.
It's such a shame.
Shame. How do you feel about Baela Targaryen?
Baela Targaryen, daughter of Daemon and Laenor. Throughout season 2, she's rooting for everyone, you know. She's just the cheerleader.
Yeah, it's funny because in the book, Baela is the fun one. She's the rebellious one.
Yeah.
She likes flying. She likes boys. She's not really involved in the war, but she's just like having a good time and causing trouble. Whereas in the show, she's like the sensible, reliable one.
Yeah.
She's the one telling everyone to do the right thing and be grown up. And I do like that she has like an identity as a Targaryen. She says, I don't want Driftmark. I am blood and fire. Like, that's cool.
I'm going to die the same way my mum did. I'm going to choose to die in a giant fireball for some reason. That's sort of cool. Good for you.
Which is funny because as far as we know, Baela does not do that. Actually, do we know how Baela dies? I don't think we know how Baela dies.
I don't think we do.
Yeah, because again, unfinished story in the long run. But I mean, Baela and Rhaena do survive the war. They're one of the few to survive the war. But so yeah, like my concern is that like in the books, Baela is rebellious and fun. Rhaena is ladylike and obedient. But in Hot D, Baela and Rhaena are both a bit dutiful, but a bit rebellious.
Well, Rhaena's rebellion like comes at the end of an arc. Like she works her way to being rebellious.
That's true. But my concern is that they've made the characters too similar.
I think we needed to see Baela having a bit more fun with life.
I agree. And I think that she needs to like she didn't do anything in season 2 really. Like she swooped on Criston, which is like kind of nice because it establishes that she's a bit of a loose cannon. It establishes that she can fight on a dragon, which is going to be important when Baela and Moondancer fight Aegon and Sunfyre.
Maybe Baela will save Aegon. Maybe Jace and Baela go out together to the gullet and Baela watches Jace dies and she saves Aegon.
God, what if Jace tells Baela to save Aegon the Younger instead of saving him?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Maybe.
So
it could suck. Everything could suck. Everything could be, it could be good. It could be bad. I don't know, man.
Who hurt you? Were you reading George's blog again?
I was watching Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that'll do it. In the book, Alfred Broom almost kills Baela because like Baela fights Aegon and Sunfyre and Moondancer gets all messed up.
Yeah.
And then Alfred comes to like finish off Baela after she jumps off her dragon. So it'd be cool if we saw Baela and Alfred interact, you know? And also like years after the war, Baela marries Alyn, her cousin. And so for that reason, it'd be nice to see them interact. Although I imagine they might not include that in the show because it is a while
it's a bit
after,
down the road,
and like Alyn is older in the show, and do we need more cousin incest? But the reason why I like that is that like one of the big plot threads throughout the whole season is the Driftmark Velaryon inheritance.
Yeah.
And all these opinions about who should inherit Driftmark. And what's going to happen is that Corlys will legitimize Alyn and Addam, and Alyn will inherit Driftmark. But Baela marrying Alyn means that she is part of that legacy.
It's like the way that the Iron Throne succession should have been handled by like a marriage pact between the two branches of the house. That's what does happen with the Velaryon succession. Because
Rhaenys, like one of Rhaenys' dying wishes was for Rhaena to inherit Driftmark.
Yeah.
And only Rhaena because Baela's meant to inherit the throne. I mean, that's one of the other things is that Baela and Rhaena are both considered the leading contenders as heirs to the throne for a while, until little Viserys comes back from the east. So yeah, they've got really sort of interesting ongoing stories, both Baela and Rhaena, and
it sort of depends on where they choose to cut the story off. Like, where are we ending this thing? What does season 4 leave us with?
They've only got potentially 16 episodes.
Jesus, 16 hours of TV to do the rest of this story. Where are they going to end it?
I mean, we've talked before, like off the top of my head, I think like Hot Day Season 1 covers about 60 pages of the book. Hot Day Season 2 covers about 30 pages of the book. And the rest of the Dance of the Dragons is about 120 pages, at least.
Yeah, so that sounds like a season 1 pace for the next 2 seasons. Is the budget going to be able to handle that? So
House of the Dragon has to get a lot faster because they've got 120 pages to cover when previously they only did 30 pages in Hot Day Season 2. They're going to have to cut a lot of minor characters, cut a lot of events, and they're going to have to end the show like right after the war's over. They don't have time for the beginning of the Regency.
Yeah, no dilly-dallying.
They don't have time for a protracted false dawn and hour of the wolf like in the books. They're going to have like Rhaenyra. No, they're going to have Aegon die in the penultimate episode of season 4, and then Cregan come and Aegon III marries Jaehaera in the finale of the series, and that's it. That's it.
I don't know how that could be anything other than mega rushed.
It is going to feel rushed. Like, if they include only the most essential deaths and battles, there will be a death or a battle like every episode. If there's only 16 episodes left in this show, there must be a major death or battle in every episode.
It's going to be the most bombastic shit you've ever seen.
Which is the craziest like pace change and when you consider how slow season 2 is.
Yeah, it's a result of how fucking meandering this season was.
Which it wigs me out that Ryan Condal, the showrunner, said to the press a while ago that he expects for season 3 into season 4 to continue the same narrative cadence as season 2, which no one knows what that sentence means.
Yeah, that sounds like some woo.
Yeah, Ryan had this very frustrating like press conference where he didn't really answer anything directly. Like he was, that man's under some fucking stress, man, because George, his idol, is publicly berating him. HBO David Zaslav is taking away his budget. Like, I would not want to be Ryan Condal right now.
Wasn't he like 37 a couple of years ago? The man looks 60.
That guy has aged like Obama during his presidency.
Poor
that guy
Ryan.
has like gone through the beach that makes you old.
The fountain of unyouth.
Being a dragon showrunner will age you 30 years in 2 years. That was a bit rude. I'm sorry, Ryan. But my point is that, what's my point? My point is that they're going to have to really pick up the fucking pace. And it's going to feel like whiplash because they're going to go from slow-ass season 2 to hitting the pedal to the fucking metal for season 3 and 4.
But apparently they're not going to do that.
Well, the alternative, the horrifying possibility is that they're just going to cut most of it and they're just going to narrow the scope of the show to let's just focus on Rhaenyra and Alicent and Daemon and let's not include any of the extraneous battles. They might do that because like part of why this season 2 was cut down was because of budget changes because Warner Brothers Discovery, Peacock, Feather, Disney Plus is taking away their money. So they might just cut most of it. They might make it shit.
We have decided to make it awful.
But they could make it good.
It'd be nice if they did.
I hope they make it good.
It'd be really cool if they made it good.
Fuck. All right. So what we were trying to say, Baela's fine.
Baela, everyone.
Yeah. No, look, Baela could be good. I think she'll be involved in the gullet. And look, it's a shame because like Baela has cool things that she does after the dance. She's the darling of the city. Baela and Rhaena are beloved of the commons.
Yeah.
Baela loses her dragon, but Rhaena gains a dragon called Morning. The hope for dragons in the future. Whereas Rhaena in the fucking show is what? She's going to become a fire witch with the burned men? Do you think Rhaena's gonna become a fire witch of the burned men like Nettles does?
That could be epic.
So at the end of Nettles' storyline, like Rhaenyra tries to have Nettles killed, and so Nettles farewells Daemon and then flies off with Sheepstealer and lives in the wild, and it's implied that she becomes worshipped by the random hill tribes of the Vale, which we saw in GOT season 1 with Tyrion. Mm-hmm. And she like starts a cult of people who worship her as a fire witch. It's one of the like weirdest and coolest little minor backstories in the series, and they've removed it. And I think that's one of the things that George Martin is so angry about.
They haven't removed it yet. We don't know. Maybe Rhaena will become a fire witch cult goddess.
That would be funny and cool.
But like, also, like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it would be so weird. And again, they have 16 episodes to turn Rhaena into an unassuming teenager to a fire priestess living in the hills with the tribesmen.
And let's be real, at this point, Rhaena is, like, at best, a secondary character.
Yeah.
Like, she's teetering on the edge of tertiary.
I really don't think that they're going to make her a fire priestess. But, I mean, Sheepstealer has to die, I would think. Maybe it would be really funny if Sheepstealer dies at the gullet. That'd be really funny.
That's insane because Sheepstealer isn't dead in the books.
Sheepstealer would have spent more time. Well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, Sheepstealer is probably dead. Do you think Sheepstealer's still around at the time of GOT? That is so funny.
Totally. There's a dragon in the Vale just hanging around and no one's seen it in 170 years.
I want Jon Snow to claim Sheepstealer. That'd be hilarious. Wouldn't that be great?
I'm going to the Vale for no reason.
So yeah, look, Rhaena is maybe the biggest question mark in the future of Hot D for me. Because they're going the most off book with Rhaena.
Yeah. And there's all of these different ways that they could be going off book.
And the meaning of it is fundamentally different. Because Rhaena, with her little hatchling that she gets morning, it represents hope for the future. And she's the darling of the city.
And that works because she was unable to have a dragon earlier on in her life.
Yeah, whereas in Hot D, she's fucking rebelling and seizing fire, and it can only end badly, I think.
She's doing the impossible. She's claiming a wild dragon. No one's done that.
They could kill Rhaena. It may make... It would make more sense to
and
kill
maybe
Rhaena.
they give mourning to Viserys.
Maybe Rhaenyra will actually just fucking kill Rhaena. Rhaenyra will just murk
like when she puts
stepdaughter.
She puts the hit out on Nettles and like they just actually do it to Rhaena.
She sends a faceless man to fucking kill her
Larys
if she sleeps next to Daemon.
walks into 8 rats and they push Rhaena off a cliff.
Yeah, man. That's actually something that I'm really sad about is that in the book, there's this really interesting little quiet drama at Maidenpool because Daemon and Nettles have this sort of ambiguous, quiet relationship together at Maidenpool, trying to find Daemon. And the Mootons get a message from Rhaenyra saying, I would like you to murder Nettles. And they're like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to murder this teenager and piss off Daemon, the prince, and his dragon. And so ultimately they have this long conversation and the Mootons ultimately decide to just tell Daemon and Nettles the truth about what Rhaenyra has done. And they sort of betray Rhaenyra and choose Daemon and Nettles instead. And Daemon and Nettles have this sad goodbye. And it's this really sort of like poignant but also mysterious.
It's interesting and sweet and a little weird.
It's very George Martin. It's a very George Martin ending because
absolutely,
because it's so melancholy and it's so open ended and it's so longing and sad and it's really lovely. And I think that's one of the things that George Martin's upset about because by putting Rhaena in the place of Nettles, they have at the very least changed that scene dramatically.
Sure.
And whatever George Martin has in his head, because we were talking about how like what's in the books is different to what's in George Martin's head sometimes.
Because he knows which of the 7 things he suggested might have happened was the thing that actually happened.
Yeah, I'm certain that George has really clear ideas.
He has concrete answers for all the questions we have in Fire and Blood.
Yeah, and they have changed that. We have lost that. So if they want Rhaena's storyline to be anywhere near as good as that, they're gonna have to fucking cook, is all I'm saying.
Gonna have to turn the oven onto gas mark fucking story mode.
They're putting on the gas burners on this one. So yeah, interesting, mysterious. I think it could be good, but I definitely am mourning the loss of Nettles because part of the point of Nettles is that Nettles seems to be a random bastard small folk character who apparently has no Targaryen blood.
Well, that's a weird little thing, isn't it? Because in the original publication of The Princess and the Queen, Nettles, there's no mention of her being a dragon seed. In fact, wasn't it said that she just wasn't one? I can't remember the original text of The Princess and the Queen. It was over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then in Fire and Blood, it's like, no, actually, she's a dragon seed.
Well, I think, the World of Ice and Fire calls her a dragon seed as well. But I the
least canon of the semi-canon books.
But I think they call her a dragon seed because she claims a dragon and therefore she is assumed to be a dragon seed.
Right, so the circular logic there.
Yeah, I mean, look, fucking Maester Yandel doesn't know. No one knows who Nettles' parents are. That's made very clear. No one knows conclusively whether Nettles has Targaryen blood.
But she was an exciting figure in The Princess and the Queen because the implications of someone who has no dragon blood claiming a dragon is really cool and interesting.
And that's something that they're highlighting in Hot Day Season 2, is Jace saying that, well, maybe it's Valyrian propaganda and maybe anyone can ride a dragon. And I think that is really important. as a thematic message in the books, which is about questioning power systems and questioning the fucking racist idea of blood supremacy, the idea that the Targaryens are better and more worthy than everyone because they have magic blood, that is so perfectly undercut by having Nettles, some rando, claim a dragon instead. So I think that's another reason why it's really unfortunate to cut Nettles and replace her with Rhaena, because Rhaena does have Targaryen blood, so they no longer are questioning that fucked up idea. So there's a lot of reasons to be disappointed about Nettles being cut. And I think that Rhaena having Sheepstealer could be good, potentially, maybe, but
Probably not as good.
yeah.
What if they haven't cut Nettles? What if Nettles shows up at the gullet? Huh? What if I can cope so hard?
It'd be really funny if Sheepstealer is already bonded to Nettles and Nettles and
She's just
Sheepstealer just
off-screen.
like eat Rhaena and then fly to the gullet. So yeah, I'm sad about Nettles being cut, but we'll see what happens with Rhaena.
I understand the impetus to want to give this character something to do in the story, because Rhaena does nothing in the book.
Yeah, Rhaena and Baela do nothing.
They are not a part of the story.
I mean, Baela does fight Aegon at the end, but other than that, they basically do nothing.
Yeah.
They really are characters for a future era of the story.
Which
that
House of the
this
Dragon
show
is
won't
not
get to.
adapting.
But the other crazy thing is that, like, as we say, they're going to have to cut most of the story in order to fit it into the next 2 seasons. So maybe they shouldn't have tried to elevate so many minor characters. If they don't have the time to tell the story, don't add extra stuff with Baela and Rhaena.
Yeah, but if you're making this ensemble cast TV show, maybe that's the problem. Maybe it shouldn't have been an ensemble cast TV show. Maybe it shouldn't have been this. Maybe this is the wrong sort of way to adapt this story.
I think part of the problem, and again, like I don't know much about the industry.
Or maybe the way to adapt this story is to give it 5 fucking seasons of 12 episodes each.
Yeah, I don't know much, but I get the sense that what happens with this show and what happens with a lot of shows is that the network's like, yeah, let's be ambitious, let's be bold, let's throw lots of money at it, big cast, yeah, it'll go for 10 seasons, big. And then inevitably after 1 season, it's like, it's not the biggest thing in the world, so therefore we're going to cut the budget, we're going to limit the scope. And so the poor writers who had planned for like this big, ambitious, long thing, big cast, they then have to scramble and cut it down. And so, like, maybe if they had known how many episodes they were going to get total, maybe if they had known what their budget was, they could have set the scope at a reasonable place. I think a lot of shows are suffering from starting too ambitious, but then getting their shit cut.
Wanting to be Game of Thrones again. Game of Thrones was lightning in a bottle. It's not going to happen again, especially the way that the industry is looking now.
Yeah, the business model only works if they gamble on each show being the biggest thing in the world. It seems a bit shit, but again, I don't know much about how it works. Anyway, so
I don't know anything.
I don't know nothing. Hey, it's Hugh the Hammer.
Oh my God. I love this guy.
He looks so fucking good, doesn't he?
He's awesome. I love him.
Hugh was unexpected because Hugh in the books is really interesting, but for a totally different set of reasons than why Hugh is interesting in Hot Day.
Why do you find him interesting in the book?
The reason I find Hugh interesting in the book is that he seems like a dickhead, but he is haunted by these fucking prophecies. He gets obsessed with this prophecy that when the hammer falls, a new dragon will rise. And Hugh eventually decides that he wants to be the king of Westeros.
Just like so out of pocket for this random blacksmith.
Yeah. And he seems like a dick. Like he like hammers horseshoes into the heads of people. And like he's really quite this violent, brutish
sort of
guy.
goofy, isn't it?
Yeah. But he has this very Targaryen storyline of seeming to be haunted by dreams and prophecies and wanting more and tasting dragonfire. And he really seems to encapsulate those themes of power and the seduction of power and the seduction of fire. So,
they have to do that in the show. They have to. I have to give it to me.
I think that they will. I think there's no reason for them to fuck this up. Like, because I think that what they've done with Hugh is that they've made him even more interesting by giving him, instead of just being this brutal, rough guy,
he's a wife guy.
He's a wife guy. But he loses his daughter, and they made it
tears them apart.
It's even more interesting because he starts as a loyalist to Aegon.
Yeah.
And he wants to believe in Aegon, and Aegon personally promises to pay him, but then fails him, which leads to the death of his daughter. So then he changes sides to the Blacks.
And it's introduced so well, Hugh, we meet this guy, but it's an Aegon scene. We're seeing Aegon's experience on the throne, and we're being introduced to this guy who we're going to follow for the rest of the season. It's well integrated writing. I really like Hugh.
And now that he's got Vermithor, the second biggest dragon in the world, maybe he'll get dragon dreams from his connection to Vermithor. And also, they've established that his wife, Kat, has a brother at Tumbleton, and Kat wants to go to Tumbleton. And Tumbleton is where the terrible, horrific battles happen, where Hugh turns against the Blacks.
Maybe that's why the battle's going to happen at Tumbleton.
Yeah, no, Kat has to be involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Somehow in Tumbleton. And so, will Hugh, I don't know, incidentally burn his own wife? Or will Kat be held hostage? Or will he try to protect her? There's a million different great dramatic ways
try
that
to
Kat
kill
can be
Hugh?
involved. Yeah, God. There's a lot of fascinating possibilities here. Will Larys be involved? Will Otto be involved? Will Daemon be involved? Because there's this really interesting sort of ongoing drama in the books where the Greens take Tumbleton, but then they're sort of at this weird impasse where they don't know what they should do next because their king Aegon is gone and their second king,
which is going to
Aemond,
marry
is gone.
How in season 2 the Dragonstone Dithras are like, okay, so we're in this position. What do? We don't have a queen.
Yeah. Finally, the Tumbleton Dithras are gonna have their time in the
tiptoes of Tumbleton.
And Daemon is going to be there, who's described as this gentle, kind, positive kid who's thrust into the most horrifying battleground in the war.
Teenage heartthrob. If you sent Justin Bieber circa 2015, no, 2013,
before he got all the tats.
Yeah.
and Daemon squabbles with Hugh when Hugh is saying, I'll be the king. And then Daemon throws wine in Hugh's face and all of there's a lot of really interesting personalities. It reminds me of at the start of The Winds of Winter, that great book that we've all read. We've all speculated so much about the start of Winds of Winter. All these interesting characters are converging on Marine because you got Daenerys and Tyrion and Victarion and Macquarie and Barristan and all these totally different personalities clashing.
Quentin's ghost.
Quentin's alive, didn't you know?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And so it's a little bit at Tumbleton, there's going to be Otto and Hugh and Daemon and Addam's going to swoop in and Ulf is there and maybe Kat will be there and there's all these interesting personalities swirling and clashing, and I think there's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of ambiguity how they could play it.
They're gonna have to be really inventive to fuck it up, I think.
Yeah, this is an easy win.
They've set themselves up for a goal here with Hugh.
I could imagine them combining the first Battle of Tumbleton and the second Battle of Tumbleton.
I wouldn't like that, but I guess it makes some sense.
Well, again, if they've got a reduced budget and they've got not many episodes, they're going to have to smush some stuff together. But I hope that they do have a bit of time for the sort of protracted fucking about at Tumbleton, which is
the circumstances to shift in such a way that the second battle actually makes sense.
Yeah, and this sort of connects to Otto because Otto we think is going to play a role that Hobart Hightower plays in the books. Where Otto's one of the people who's trying to figure out what the hell do we do? We don't have a king. We don't have a prince.
It is so fun to throw someone like Otto Hightower into the complete political fuckery of Tumbleton.
Yes.
That's just so juicy and wonderful.
Yes. And because, Otto is such a highlight of Hot D Season 2 for the few scenes that he's in. And I think that, what Otto, Rhys Ifans as Otto is so good at playing that just completely exasperated, frustrated thing. And Tumbleton is nothing but pages upon page of just exasperation and frustration as fucking Hugh is nailing horseshoes into people's heads. Ulf is just drunk under the table for the entire battle. Daemon has just got the 5,000 mile stare. This poor, it's absolute fucking chaos.
If you thought Otto was annoyed at Aegon for hanging the rat catchers, you haven't seen anything.
Yeah, for real. Tumbleton is just an entire chapter of Otto just screaming, the rat catchers, just at the complete fuckery around him.
He's going to make the F in feckless go for 8 measures.
The fecklessness is reaching previously uncharted levels. There's never been this much feck lacking. So, Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, they could have a
What did they do with all my feck?
they could have a Hugh vision sequence, and like Ulf becomes Hugh's sort of ally, and like Ulf meanwhile is like, yeah, I want High Garden.
I don't know why. It seems like the party capital of the world. I'm the party boy of the world.
It's crazy.
The party king in the party capital. It makes sense. I'm going to be king of Aegon.
and it's all about how like the seduction of power leads you to atrocity. And I think that Hugh and Ulf absolutely are like ready for that downward slide. So I'm into it. And this is what's frustrating, man, is that like season 2 was so slow and they have all this great material to get to. And you just know they're going to have to choke. They're going to have to cut out a bunch of this great material that could have been in season 3 and 4 because they wanted to spend more time with Rhaenyra looking sad and impotent on Dragonstone. Like someone fucked up.
Is that what they wanted to do?
Oh yeah. I mean, we've said before, no one wanted season 2 to be the way that it is. They wanted it to have the gullet. They probably wanted it to have the fall.
I bet there's like 3 people out there who love every single thing about season 2 and they're like, what do you mean?
And those people are wrong.
How dare you enjoy this?
So yeah, Hugh, I really enjoy. I think that they have elevated the character. I think and hope that they will continue to elevate the character. What do you think of Ulf?
Tom Bennett was such a delight in this season.
He was a delight. He was another unexpected delight.
Look at his little face.
Do you think he's really a Targaryen dragon seed?
That's an interesting idea now that we've talked about Nettles.
Yeah, you're right.
Because Ulf's friend Clay in that bar scene is like, yeah, you can tell he's a Targaryen bastard. Look at his hair, and they've got the same hair. And it's like, okay, is this guy for realsies?
They did like...
He has this crazy story about him being Baelon's son, and all the fan base knows that Baelon would never father a bastard, so...
Yeah, I find that very funny, the Baelon stands, the Baelon defenders who are like, I know Baelon personally. He would have never slept around on his wife. When it's like, Baelon has like 5 sentences describing him, and also his wife died young, so he might have had sex with people afterwards.
And he's a Targaryen. He's capable of all sorts of depravity.
Yeah, I think it's entirely plausible that Baelon had a bastard.
But is it more interesting if he didn't?
It is, because Ulf's line, when like he's saying, oh, I don't want to go to Dragonstone, Ulf says, I can't be sure it's all true. And he's saying like, well, I don't know if it's true if Rhaenyra wants dragon seeds, but he also potentially is saying, I don't know if I'm really a Targaryen boss. I mean, how could he verify it? How could he possibly know his parentage for a certainty? Yeah, he hasn't got Ancestry.com.
Either his mum just said it to him someday, or he decided it for himself so he could get a free drink.
So I agree. If they're not going to have Nettles be the non-Targaryen dragon rider, maybe Ulf will say like, hey, Hugh, don't tell anyone. But like,
I'm pretty sure
I'm not a Targaryen.
Yeah, I actually knew my dad. He was a piece of shit from Flea Bottom.
So in the books, Ulf becomes a monster. Like he starts out as a dickhead and he becomes like a monster. Like he, quote, at Tumbleton, he drowned himself in wine and flesh. He, quote, raped 3 maidens every night, and those who failed to please were fed to his dragon. So he becomes a rapist murderer. I don't think they're going to make Tom Bennett do that.
Yeah, I don't think he'll become that cartoonishly evil.
Yeah.
Not that sort of evil only exists in cartoon. In fact, cartoons are some of the purest places on this earth.
But yeah, no, I don't think they will make Ulf do those terrible things, but he'll probably do some terrible things.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they'll make Hugh more the sort of violent monster and Ulf will just sort of be like his crony, maybe? I mean, Hugh has the bigger dragon and that establishes a certain power dynamic, I think. I think that Ulf will probably continue being comic relief because it is funny in the books when there's this battle that happens at Tumbleton and Ulf sleeps through the battle.
Yeah, and
because he's just drunk under a table. Like, that's very funny.
It does make sense for this version of Ulf to do that.
Yeah.
I do see that happening.
Yeah. I think...
And this show needs some fucking levity, man.
Yeah, it does.
There's a reason we were clapping every time Tom Bennett showed up on screen, every time Rhys Ifans made a face.
Every time Simon Strong made a face.
Yeah.
I think that Ulf does need to be established as a threat, though, because the way Ulf dies in the books is that Hobart Hightower poisons him with poisoned wine, and to make sure he drinks the wine, Hobart also drinks the poisoned wine, and we think that Otto will play this role. So the idea of Otto willingly sacrificing himself to take out Ulf because Ulf is so much of a threat and because he's demanding Highgarden and because he's such a dangerous loose cannon with a dragon, like, for that reason, they have to establish Ulf as a threat.
Yeah, why else would Otto kill himself?
And there definitely is like a sinister edge that they established in season 2 when Ulf is like, well, you better make me a knight, like he's willing to.
And in the montage at the end of the season, he looks like concerningly confident in himself for someone who has never been instructed in the ways of dragon riding.
Ulf has never shown like care for other people.
Yeah.
But I think the other angle is that maybe the danger of Ulf and to some extent HUGH is not even so much bad intentions as just they control some of the biggest weapons in the world, and they are not in control of them because they have not been taught they don't have dragon keepers to teach them.
And as Viserys tells us in season 1, no one's in control of dragons.
Yeah.
It's a myth. It's made up. No, like he can control Balerion. Rhaenyra can't control Syrax. She might think she can, but she can't.
And that's the thematic message is that you can't really control power. Power controls you. Fire controls you. And that connects with like what actually happens at the Battle of Tumbleton, where basically like Vermithor and Tessarion and Sea Smoke all like messily kill each other. And it's not really clear why they do that because like most of these dragons don't have riders at the time. And it's like, it's just
chaos meeting itself.
Yeah. Like Tumbleton is just this orgy of like fire and blood and death. And it's no one's in control of what's happening.
Yeah. Just like season 2 of House of the Dragon, this was no one's vision. No one wanted this to happen.
And HUGH gets like killed randomly by this guy, John Roxton, and like Daeron, no one's even sure how Daeron died. Like a tent collapsed on him in the fires, maybe. They could do something fun and interesting with Daeron's death, potentially.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, oh God, what if HUGH kills Daeron?
Why not?
Yeah. So there's a million
what if
interesting
Daeron's
things
the
they
one
could
who
do.
poisons himself to kill Ulf? Like, what if
God.
Otto isn't tied up in that and he's actually doing something else in the show? What if he's already dead by then? I don't know.
For all we know, Otto will be stung to death by the Beesburies. We don't know for sure whether Otto will actually be involved in all this. So yeah, God, what if Daeron sacrificed himself? That'd be crazy.
I just love that Otto Hightower might legitimately be in the custody of the Beesburies. Like this, they're a real house. They are a feudal institution, but they're called it's a fucking Beesburies of Honeyholt. Like it's a comic relief that they exist.
They have a funny name, so they have to overcompensate. People are like that in real life. Like people with funny names. Like some of the most savage motherfuckers in the world are named like Arnold, you know?
Or
like,
Elon.
Yeah, man. When people have dorky names, they have to overcompensate. I mean, my name's Schwift X, so I get it.
Yeah.
You got to go hard when your name's Schwift X.
That's why I killed all those people.
So, yeah, maybe. I think that I really like Otto poisoning Ulf, though, because Otto kind of caused this whole mess.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
I wish that, like... So killing Ulf is a big deal, but it would feel better if Otto, like, was contributing to an even bigger deal in killing himself, if we're going to go down that route.
Yeah, well, I mean...
But it does make sense.
They could go the path of establishing Ulf as more of a monster. Like
I think, like, that's how you earn Otto's sacrifice.
Yeah. Like, if you establish... that like HUGH and Ulf are like, yeah, we're going to go to King's Landing. We're going to just burn the shit out of everyone and take the throne. They establish a really big threat. And then Otto's like, you know what? I have to be the person to take this down. Because like, I mean, I parallel it to like Criston, right? Because Criston in the books seems responsible for the Dance of the Dragons. Like the books make it seem like Criston is the one who like convinced Aegon to take the throne. Yep. They call him the Kingmaker. And in the end, in the books, Criston's death is that he's shot by arrows and they tell his corpse, thousands of people are dead because of you, Criston. And it's powerful. But they can't really do that in the show because in the show, Criston is not as responsible for the war.
He's more of a backseat passenger to the dance.
Yeah, in the show, it's Otto who's more responsible because he was he was kind of the leader of the plot to make Aegon the king. So I think for that reason... it could be really powerful for Otto to choose to sacrifice himself to take out a threat because Otto feels more responsible. He's more responsible for the war.
Ulf here is going to kill untold numbers of people. He's going to cause horrible things for everyone. I've got to do something about this. I feel terrible for starting this war. I've got to do this. Maybe he's catching up with his grandson Daeron, who's freed him from the fucking Beesburies or whatever. We are just making all this up right now, by the way. And he's like, man, this kid, he's the only good person we've got left. I have to do something. I have to stop this from going down. I have to stop this crazy Ulf guy from making things even worse for the last good person I know.
Yeah.
If Daemon actually is a good person, we don't know.
I kind of like, wouldn't it be funny if Daeron's just this snotty brat?
Yeah, right.
Like if he's just this privileged, spoiled, like handsome twerp.
He's like a young Gwaaaaaaayne.
Yeah, exactly. I think that'd be
And like
quite
Gwaaaaaaayne
funny.
seems like not the worst guy, but he is a fancy lad.
Gwaaaaaaayne is great because like he's a snob and a douche, but he's also like got a heart and a head.
Yeah,
and he
quite like him. He reminds me of Larys.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Yeah. Like some people are just a bit arrogant and stuck up, but like there's vulnerability there that you can understand and I think it works. But no, I think that's a really good idea. Like what if Otto kind of does the self-sacrifice after having looked at Daemon and the impact that this has had on Daemon? Because Daemon's so interesting because they say he's gentle and kind, but then he's at Tumbleton, this horror, and like the book says that like Daemon is horrified by the plunder and the sacking and the murders that happen at Tumbleton. And like, wouldn't it be great if Daemon came up to Otto and said, hey, why did you do this?
Yeah.
Why did you start this war?
Or like,
is this worth it?
Hey, Gramps, I'm scared.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
What do we do? Can we do something?
Yeah. So Otto has failed to have sympathy for Aegon. He's failed to have sympathy for Aemond, but
And his daughter.
he's failed to have sympathy for Alicent. But like seeing this like innocent 16-year-old kid who has not done anything wrong in his life that we know of, maybe that will be what sparks Otto to go, oh, I really should not have done this. And that leads him to his tragic sacrifice. I think that could be really powerful.
To get that, we just need Ulf to become a monster.
I mean,
Or maybe it's Hugh.
Yeah, it could be Hugh for all we know. It could be Hugh and Ulf. Because no one cares about bold John Roxton. Sorry.
Yeah. That's the thing is like, yes, I'm sorry you wrote that, George, but like who cares?
It is kind of metal that Hugh is killed by John Roxton with a Valyrian steel sword.
Yeah,
called,
but it
called Lamentation, if I'm not mistaken.
It doesn't actually matter though.
Yeah. So the point is that like they have some great character to
fucking
work
cool,
with, and they have a lot of flexibility. Like they can change the details in a way that could make it fucking great.
Yeah.
So I am excited for Tumbleton. I'm
think-
excited for Hugh, for Ulf, for Daemon, for Otto. It could work really well.
In the way that like Old Town is my most anticipated location for the Winds of Winter, Tumbleton is my most anticipated location for House of the Dragon.
Yeah. It's scary though. Like it's a thin place, man. Like the horrors that occur at Tumbleton are extreme, and like the sacking, the murder, the rape, the pillaging, the burning. Like really bad things happen at Tumbleton, and I think that's where they really turn the screws on. Like, oh, war's bad, which is what George does. Like George, these books are filled with like these lurid, horrifying descriptions of how awful battlefields and war and sacks and things are, and this is their opportunity to show that.
It's Mysaria time.
What do you think of Mysaria?
A bit of a strange presence in season 2.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like her motivations shift, which I guess is kind of true of the books, very mysterious and such. I mean, like in season 1, she just kind of wants to survive. But then in the later half of season 1, she's like, I want to manipulate Otto Hightower to close the fighting pits and represent the people. But then in season 2, she's like, I just want to leave and go home.
It seems quite clear to me in episode 9 of season 1 that she doesn't think Otto is going to do any of that.
Yeah. And then she's like, so I
why
want
is
to
she
leave.
doing
And then
this?
she's like, well, now I want to smooch Rhaenyra. But now I want Rhaenyra on the throne, and I'm willing to like use the small folk to their detriment to get Rhaenyra on the like she really seems to go through like 5 different core motivations over the course of 2 seasons.
Maybe she's being walked by Larys.
That's the most likely explanation. She's another character who like is more villainous in the books. Like in the books, she seems to be the most complicit in blood and cheese happening. Like in the show,
It's a Daemon thing.
In the
Daemon
show-
asked Mysaria to make it happen.
well, in the show that they go to great pains to make it clear that Mysaria is not at all responsible, because Mysaria says that, all I did was I told Daemon the names of blood and cheese, and I didn't know what he was going to do with it, and I was imprisoned, so I had to tell Daemon, otherwise he wouldn't release me. So like Mysaria is not responsible for blood and cheese.
According to the show, she's absolved of responsibility for what happened there.
Whereas in the books, it seems she's like
I
more
did that.
complicit than Daemon. Yeah.
I did that shit. I killed that kid.
And so in like after the fall of King's Landing, Mysaria seems really cruel and vindictive. There's one alleged incident by Mushroom in which Mysaria convinced Rhaenyra to have Alicent and Helaena raped repeatedly in a brothel, which I'm sure is something they won't include in the show.
I mean, it's Mushroom. It's plausible to leave it out.
Yeah. But also Mysaria like convinces Rhaenyra to turn against Nettles and Addam, and Mysaria like feeds Rhaenyra's paranoia, which leads to Rhaenyra's downfall to the extent that I think even in the books, I think Mysaria is like trying to cause Rhaenyra's downfall. Because like Mysaria doesn't come to Dragonstone with Rhaenyra. It's not really clear to me why that's the case in the books, but it seems to me like Mysaria is like against Rhaenyra at that point.
Yes.
Not for any clear reason. Like in the books, we don't really know what Mysaria's real motivation is in the books, I feel. But yeah, Mysaria starts having sex with Daemon again, but then Daemon leaves and starts having sex with Nettles.
Like you just don't
like,
see that happening in the show.
Yeah, so I feel like Mysaria is going to be really different. And so like as I said, I think that the most interesting thing for Mysaria to do is to sort of play the role of like, what's her name, Sylvana and Essie in trying to prop up Gaemon as this like peace and justice, small folk, let's be a progressive political force and let's make the world better for small folk.
What would Rhaenyra do that would make Mysaria abandon her like that? Like in the show, with Rhaenyra already having done the things she's done, what will she do that makes Mysaria leave her?
I think that she will fail to adequately protect the small folk. She will give Rosby and Stokeworth to men instead of women. Yep. And I think that she will have sex with Daemon. I think those are the three things that will alienate Mysaria.
Maybe Alicent's involved in some way?
Yeah, I agree. God, maybe Mysaria will talk to Alicent in
what
the
if
dungeon?
Alicent's propping up Gaemon Baela?
That'd be funny. I mean, Gaemon is Alicent's grandson.
Allegedly.
And
Alicent's abandoned Aegon and Aemond already.
I mean, there's also like fucking Trystane Truefire as well, who is another like supposed
You know who we haven't touched on at all ever is the Shepherd.
Yeah, we haven't talked about
Who do you
Shepherd
think the
much.
Shepherd is? I have this headcanon back from season 1 that it's Harold Westerling.
Oh my God.
Because he walked out of the show and he hasn't been heard about since then. Like, why do that other than he's the Shepherd?
That's fucking wild, bro. So for those who haven't read the books, the Shepherd is this mysterious commoner who preaches against the Targaryens and the dragons, and the Shepherd convinces the common people to go and murder 5 dragons. When the small folk are hungry and afraid, he turns them against the dragons, and no one really knows who he is. He's missing a hand, so I don't know where Harold lost a hand.
Yeah, true.
There is that one guy in the riot
yeah.
episode who gets his hand cut off, so people think it might be him.
Harold Westerling is a named character who left, and the Shepherd is an unnamed character who comes out of nowhere. It's just like sort of the jigsaw pieces, you know?
Yeah, Harold is a major Chekhov's gun because Harold is dead in the books.
Yeah.
So it's very curious that Harold is alive and has been missing for an entire season.
Yeah. Is the show planning on doing something with that? It's there. You put it there. You got to do something with it. Otherwise, it's just like a weird hanging thread.
Yeah, it is a failure if they don't acknowledge Harold.
See me after class.
They're juggling. They dropped the ball if they don't bring up Harold. And yeah. I mean, the Shepherd's an interesting answer.
Maybe he shows up at. Maybe they do the Rickard Thorne thing at Bitterbridge with Harold Westerling. I don't fucking know, but there's no Maelor for it to happen with. Someone suggested in a comment on the early release of this video that Harold could come back as Garibald Grey, who is the commander of the Rivermen in the Fish Feed and the Butcher's Bowl in the First Battle of Tumbleton. Thematically, I like this because it means Harold put down his white cloak and he's making himself grey when he comes back, which is a delicious bit of like reverse Gandalf. You know, maybe he's embracing, acknowledging the idea that this virtuous white knight they all aspire to be is bullshit, which is like what Criston's story is about as well. And he'll face off against Criston in the Butcher's Bowl and he'll lead the men who kill him, and that could be cool. And as far as we know, there is no House Grey. Garibald is just this knight who comes out of nowhere. So yeah, maybe Gwaaaaaaayne kills Criston, maybe they keep it as Garibald, but Garibald is Harold Westerling. I don't know.
Maybe Harold kills Rhaena.
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like, honestly, Rhaena's got to die. Because, like, the whole point is that Rhaena in the show seizes fire. And the whole message of this story and this war is that fire and power destroys itself. So the moral of the story can't be that Rhaena seizes fire, takes a dragon, and then
was
just
a good
lives
thing.
happily ever after.
Right, yeah. By claiming a dragon, she has like doomed herself, right?
Yes.
In the logic of the story.
Yes. So I feel like it makes the most sense if Rhaena dies. I don't think it makes sense for her to go and live in the Vale. She didn't have a lot of fun camping and hiking through the Vale in season 2. I think Rhaena's got to die. And I'm really curious to see how it happens.
Otto will poison himself to kill Rhaena. Rhaena will somehow end up at Tumbleton also.
Otto will poison himself and then be eaten by Sheepstealer in order to poison Sheepstealer.
At this point,
Otto will dress as a sheep.
Otto coat himself in poison.
He'll roll around in glue and then in wool, so he'll look like a sheep, and he'll also drink a lot of poison so that he'll be eaten by a Sheepstealer. And he'll also try to look delicious so that Rhaena eats a bit of Otto as well.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't be a Schwift Gliders video if we didn't talk about cannibalism at some point.
True.
So yeah, Mysaria is mysterious.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about Mysaria.
I think she'll turn against Rhaenyra. I hope that she'll be involved in the small folk progressive gay sex worker uprising.
The gay space communist fucking revolution.
Yes, Mysaria is the gay agenda, and I think that she'll be involved in that. So the death of Mysaria in the books is that Rhaenyra makes like a tree, and Mysaria stays in King's Landing, and then this like guy Perkin, who's like Truefire's mate, kills Mysaria and has her whipped naked through the streets until she's dead.
Sounds like a thing that we won't be seeing.
Yeah, I kind of doubt they will do that because I mean, look, I don't know what the point or the meaning of that is in the book. Like Mysaria in the book just seems like she's this person who was a dick, and so they killed her. And she's like mysterious. And you know, I think part of the point is that she's maligned because she's foreign and she's a sex worker.
She's a powerful woman.
She's a spider who manipulates men with sex.
Yeah.
And like there is like, that's a gender thing that they're doing.
I'm sure that George has an answer for why they killed Mysaria that is in his head and not in the book. And he'll be mad that it's not the same in the show.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great irony of George's complaints is that he's complaining about future seasons that have not yet been made, which contradict his future books, which he has not yet explicated.
It's like, man, I'm sorry, George, you wrote a weird book.
Yeah, I'm sorry that the show that hasn't been made doesn't line up with your headcanon that you haven't written.
This franchise is so much fun.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre. Mysaria is someone who, in my head, might survive. And like,
okay, yeah.
I know that this is like dumb, but like I wouldn't be mad if Mysaria survives the dance, goes east, and puts on a necklace and then takes on the appearance of Melisandre. I would not be angry if Mysaria is Melisandre.
I don't know if I'd be angry. I'd just like sort of groan, I think.
Like she looks into a fire and she's like, ooh, R'hllor's a
and
cool
here,
god.
da, 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 and then like, ooh, the night is dark and full of
Like it'd be goofy, but I kind of would love it. I mean, I would prefer that than seeing Sonoya Mizuno whipped naked through the streets until dead. I think it'd be funny if she's Melisandre.
That it would be funny. That's definitely true.
She could go to the House of Black and White and die there. That'd be gnarly.
That'd be weird. She'd bump into Larys and Aegon's, leftover trash from when they were in Braavos. Where's that going?
I think that's just a mislead so that it's a twist when they're at Dragonstone instead.
Oh, yeah. We're not actually going to see them there.
Yeah.
That's a shame because I'd love to see more of Braavos, always.
You think Sylvi's going to survive?
She doesn't have the feeling of someone who's going to make it, no.
So I think that Sylvi will probably play the role of Sylvana. And Sylvana's one of the people who leads the Gaemon Gay People's Revolution.
Gaemon, gay men.
Yes.
I get it now.
Very subtle, George. Gaemon is a subtle nod to gay men. And so what happens in the books is that like Aegon takes back King's Landing and becomes the king, and he kills Sylvana and Essie and puts an end to the People's Revolution, and he spares Gaemon. And the books say that, well, it was determined under torture that Gaemon was in fact not the bastard son of Aegon. But I think the fact that Aegon spared Gaemon shows that he is the real father of Gaemon. And so I think Mysaria should be involved in that, and that's why I think Mysaria could reveal that Gaemon is in fact Aegon's son. Maybe Aegon will kill Mysaria for that reason.
That could be a good explanation for that, like a way to tie those things up.
Yeah, and it's possible that Sylvi will be killed as well, and maybe Diana if she's involved. I mean, like...
Also, Aegon has every other reason to kill Mysaria anyway.
Yeah.
She kidnapped him in season 1.
So it's definitely a downer that, like, you know, Sylvana and Essie and potentially Mysaria and Sylvi's, their attempt at making positive change to empower the small folk will fail. And I think that's why it would be interesting if it's Rhaenyra's fault to some extent.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, some of these characters could live on and provide a glimmer of hope. Like maybe Sylvi will survive, or maybe Mysaria will survive.
Maybe it's Diana.
Actually, well, it could be bloody Orwyle, because that's one of my favorite bits in the book is that Orwyle, at the end of the story, he gets imprisoned by Cregan Stark, and Cregan sentences Orwyle to death because Orwyle provided the poison that was used to kill Aegon, I believe. But they realize that Orwyle's kind of a cool guy, so they're like, instead of executing him, let's just like leave him on death row in like a comfortable room, and he can just be indefinitely, his execution is indefinitely suspended. So he just like hangs out and he like writes his book, the book that Fire and Blood is based on.
Yeah.
And then he's going to be sent to the wall, but then he escapes being sent to the wall. And then they find him like years later working in a brothel, like just helping the sex workers and like teaching them how to read. And,
that is
like,
pretty epic.
Doing medicine for them and stuff. And he calls himself Old Will instead of Orwyle or something. And it's like, it's just the coolest thing that this guy like survived this war and he's like trying to help people. And he's just like a cool guy who no one really wants to kill. Maybe Orwyle could do that in the show. I hope they include that because it's such a neat little part of the book. I mean, it could almost be like an epilogue to House of the Dragon where Orwyle is writing Fire and Blood. I mean, it was like that cringe bit at the end of Game of Thrones when like Sam presents the book.
A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, I guess like maybe it'll feel too goofy if they do that again in Hot D. But it's just such a neat little detail that Orwyle survives and does that, and it would be cool if they include that. And maybe Orwyle, like, you know, since he's working with the sex workers and stuff, maybe he can sort of carry on that, like, hey, maybe there is hope of building a world where people aren't oppressed quite so badly.
Fast forward to Game of Thrones and nothing's changed.
The wheel is as yet unbroken.
Yeah, I like that. Orwyle. I think Diana also might make it through and be the, like, carry honor of that legacy. Is Diana gonna be involved in this Gaemon pale hair stuff? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for no reason that Alinda talks to Diana and works with Sylvi and all that. They're going somewhere.
Yeah, that scene with Sylvi and Diana and Ulf in the pub, like that's very much just like rolling those characters together to see where they're going to go in the future.
And Gaemon, the possible bastard of Aegon, we could have seen him in season 1 when we saw that blonde kid at the fighting pit. That
could have been Gaemon.
Yeah, because it's explicitly a bastard of Aegon that's been abandoned. So it all comes together. It all makes sense. Let's talk about Daemon.
This guy with the stank face.
Look at that chin. My God. So did you like Daemon's arc in season 2?
I've gone on record saying yep. Yep, I did.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, it is unfortunate that it's a slow introspective arc in a frustratingly slow introspective season.
Like, and it's putting on hold the most bombastic, fiery character season 1 had.
I think that, like, the whole sort of, like, Riverlands plotline with Daemon working with Willem Blackwood and sort of clashing with Oscar Tully is, like, I don't know, it's weird. Like, they didn't need to do that. Like, the books don't say that Daemon, like, struggled.
Yeah, it's like a single sentence where it's like, and he raised an army.
Yeah, like, I mean, they could have instead have, like, you know, shown the battles and stuff in Riverlands going on. But they instead chose this sort of weird plot line, which I think was, like, I mean, what was the point of it? The point was that Daemon had to mature a bit. He had to, like, learn how to play well with others a bit. He had to, like, take responsibility for unleashing Willem Blackwood.
Take responsibility for his life.
Yeah.
You know, he has visions of young Rhaenyra, Viserys, and Laenor.
And I think, like, the visions and, like the weird, like, incest mother vision and, like, all of that is, like, very Targaryen. Like, that is, like, what the Targaryens are like in the books.
So good to see that on screen for once.
Yeah, like I feel like that was one of the best depictions of Rhaegar that we've ever had, and it's Daemon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I liked Daemon's arc, but my question is like, where is it going? Because like in the books, Daemon seems to abandon Rhaenyra? Question mark.
But at the end of season 2, we've had this huge declaration that seems very genuine.
Yeah,
that he's going to serve Rhaenyra going forwards.
Yeah, so it's like, are they really gonna like have Daemon declare his loyalty only to abandon her?
Yeah, and like cutting Nettles, it sort of makes it seem like, is that going to happen at all? Is Daemon actually just loyal to Rhaenyra now, like forever?
But does that mean that he's not gonna have any more character growth for the rest of the series?
Are we done with Daemon? Is it just he's static now until his death?
I think one thing that they could do is like, I mean, why did Daemon become loyal to Rhaenyra in season 2? It's because of these visions, right? But part of the point of this story is about questioning visions and prophecy.
It's what drove Viserys crazy.
So maybe the story is that like in season 2, Daemon's like, okay, I believe in Rhaenyra because of these visions, but then throughout season 3 and onwards, he's going to be like, oh, and that sucks actually. Like, I accept that my destiny is to die for Rhaenyra, but I'm starting to realize that Rhaenyra really sucks because Rhaenyra is going through a downward spiral.
And at the same time, we'll be seeing her political actions starting to suck as well.
Yeah. So I think maybe what Daemon's arc is about now is like just grappling with the fact that he's destined to die for Rhaenyra, but it's not going to be very good for anybody involved. It's like the Rhaegar stuff, like the sense of doom and like Alys continues to be involved because like Alys hooks up with Aemond and she's there.
That was another foreshadowing thing that really bothered me is in episode 5, is it, or 6, when Daemon's like, oh, be sure you never meet Aemond One Eye. He's a bad egg. He'll treat you badly, Alys Rivers. And it's like, okay, come on. Yeah. Anyway, go on with your story.
That was on the nose. I mean, it was also just a very funny decision to tell the audience and the characters that Aemond and Daemon are going to die in the God's Eye.
Yes, it was very strange. That's not even foreshadowing. That's just, here's what's going to happen, everyone.
Yeah, like George with his prophecies are usually a bit more subtle than that. Like it usually doesn't tell you this character will die in this place and this time. It's usually more
It's bold and interesting though, because it's like, what's gonna, like, really? Do I trust this character saying what's going to happen in the future? But because I've read the book, I know that like Alys is completely correct. Helaena is completely correct. Those things are going to happen. So what's the point of telling the audience? It's interesting. The point of providing the audience with information that the characters don't know is dramatic irony, where we have the, picture of what's going to happen. We have a fuller picture of the story than the characters do, and that informs us in new ways of their actions. But does this really do that for us if the characters also know? And like, what are we gaining from Helaena having said that to us?
I think that's a good question.
It's weird.
I think you got to think about like, well, what is the impact on Helaena? Because like, if Helaena knows how Daemon's going to die, and if she knows how Aemond is going to die, she probably knows how she's going to die, right?
Yes.
And so that's one of
she's
the really...
She's going to commit suicide for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, George very, very bitterly said that Ryan is planning for Helaena to commit suicide for no reason. But it's like, I think that they could do some really interesting things around like free will and prophecy. Like the very themes that George is very interested in the books.
Yeah, so like having Helaena tell Daemon, having Alys tell Daemon how he's going to die, that's going to make him think about that.
Yeah, I think that they could explore prophecy and destiny and free will in some interesting ways. Because like
in one of these 16 episodes.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, they do not have time for all of these things.
There's no time for any of this.
Yeah, but
fuck.
So yeah, I'm curious about where Daemon's going. I have liked it so far, but they are diverging quite a lot because they're taking out the Nettles relationship. They're altering the Daemon-Rhaenyra relationship. I mean, I think that obviously like Daemon's death fighting Aemond and Vhagar over the God's Eye will be sick. Like, I think that's an easy win. That's an easy thing to do well.
They'd have to really fuck that one up.
It's
think, like Rook's Rest. Like they changed Rook's Rest and it was still awesome.
Yeah. I think they made it better.
I do too.
I liked
Sorry, everyone.
Rook's Rest. And yeah, I think Daemon like continuing to grapple with all the shit that he's done and trying to redeem himself in some way. I think that like they showed Daemon having a vision of Aemond of himself wearing Aemond's eye patch. I think that means like when Daemon kills Aemond, he's like killing his darker half. He's killing his reflection.
Yes.
Like if Aemond's evil is partly a consequence of Daemon's bad behavior, then by killing Aemond, he's taking responsibility he's like killing his shitty younger version of himself.
He's obtaining absolution for himself.
Yeah. And there's also the supernatural thematic symbolism when, the God's Eye, Isle of Faces, the nexus of old God's power in the south, that is what swallows the dragons. And the idea of like, if you want to get into mythology, I like the idea that the White Walkers are the consequence of humanity stealing dragon fire from the old gods in some sense, which is a whole other multi-hour discussion in and of itself. But the idea that the old gods swallow back the fire, is like,
and it's like this is when the dragons die. Vhagar and Caraxes. That's basically like dragon time is over.
Yeah, it's almost like restoring the balance in some sense, and like Alys is there. Alys is there watching while it's happening. I have this like image in my head of like, it's nighttime and there's the bursts of fire as these two titanic monsters are doing mortal combat in the skies and these flashes of light, and then they pan down, and on the Isle of Faces amidst the weirwoods, there's just like dozens of green men just standing there silently, and you just see the fire reflecting in their eyes, and it's like they don't need to say anything, but just give us the sense of this is what those old gods want, is to swallow the fire and to take it back from man who stole it from them. And it's like, ooh, they could, because they put a green man in season 2.
Yeah.
No one thought they were going to show a green man in season 2, but
even
they
the
did
most
it.
hopeful book addicts never thought they were going to do that.
It's the most like alienating thing to do to the casual watchers. Like, why is there an antler man in my dragon?
So this would be payoff for that, and it would show respect to all that mythological stuff.
So yeah, I think that there's huge potential for Daemon's death to slap
To be the
emotionally,
most epic thing ever.
thematically, supernaturally.
Yeah. And like actionly, because this design they've given Caraxes of his ridiculous neck, and like both times that Vhagar has killed another dragon, she's gone for the neck. Like they're
Yeah. Yeah, I think
it's all being set up.
I think we talked before about Caraxes like constricting around Vhagar like an anaconda with his noodly neck and trying to squeeze the life from her.
It's so fucking cool. And then like when the dragons are both tired, Daemon's just like, fuck it. What am I going to do? Like, and he just jumps.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so cool. Everyone.
Yeah.
It's going to be so cool.
Because in the book, Daemon jumps off his dragon onto Aemond on his dragon and plunges the Valyrian Steelsword Darksister through his eye socket, his one remaining eye. So, I'm hopeful for Daemon. I think Matt Smith's doing good work. I think the writers are doing good work with Daemon. I think it could and should work.
Yeah, I think that we will see it like a logical, emotional departure from Rhaenyra for Daemon, informed by her political actions and his like coming to terms with his emotional turmoil and thinking, oh wait, Rhaenyra's sort of acting like how I was acting. She's looking after her children as poorly as I was looking after mine.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that's one of the themes is kids repeating their parents' mistakes.
And Laenor says to Daemon in his visions, are you looking after our daughters? There's a war happening here. Yeah. Like, how are your kids doing? And, we've been talking about what Rhaena's role in the future of the show is going to be. Well, there it is.
They never found Daemon's body, Glidus. Maybe he goes and lives in the Vale with Rhaena and Sheepstealer.
Maybe.
That would be nice.
I don't think they're going to do that, though.
No, I don't.
I think in this show that Daemon dies there. So who's next?
We've talked a bit about Alys. In the books, she hooks up with Aemond, and she witnesses the death of Aemond and Daemon, and then she takes over Harrenhal as a mysterious, sinister witch queen.
Hell yeah.
But Alys in the show is nice, and she doesn't like atrocities.
Is she nice? She does murder an old man. For political reasons.
Yeah, but she also says, Daemon, don't do atrocities in the Riverlands. And then in the book, Aemond does atrocities in the Riverlands.
Yeah.
and Alys becomes his lover. So, I think one possibility is that Alys like is engineering the death of Aemond.
Yeah, to control him.
Like Alys is leading Aemond to his death to end his atrocities. I guess that's
like,
probably what they're gonna do.
We've seen that Aemond is sexually vulnerable,
And
like it stands to reason that Alys is going to figure that out and like take advantage of, which is sort of fucked up. Like, let's not beat around the bush here.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a show about fucked up people doing fucked up things in a war.
You just said that Alys is nice, and like, so I guess she's doing this really fucked up thing to accomplish the end of a tyrant destroying the Riverlands.
Yeah, I think it works. I hope that that's what they do. In the books, Alys is meant to be very old, and she uses magic to look young.
Like Melisandre.
And so it's interesting that in Hot D, Aemond has this relationship with Sylvi, who's much older than him, and is this like mother figure to him almost.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a shame that Alys isn't older in the show, or doesn't look older.
Maybe she will be.
Maybe she'll take off her magic jewelry and she'll be an octogenarian.
You see the necklace she's wearing in this photo? She's going to take it off and become 3,000 years old.
Well, she's got a toe ring. Is her magic amulet, you see.
Tongue piercing that makes her look 400 years younger.
So yeah, there's a few ways they could play it, isn't there? I mean, it's interesting because in the books, Aemond and Alys come and meet Daemon at Harrenhal. And Aemond says, oh, Alys sees many things. Alys sees the future in the fires, in the waters, in the roots. She's really magical. So it seems in the books like Aemond understands and is connected to Alys's visions, and that they're on the same page and they have a shared vision of the future. And yet he dies.
Well, in the show, Aemond has already been told by Helaena that he's going to die in the God's Eye.
Yeah.
So I think it sort of makes sense that Alys is going to be like, oh yeah, no, you're going to die at the God's Eye. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess. What else you got for me?
Well, yeah, right? Like what could possibly make Aemond feel okay with dying at the God's Eye?
Killing Daemon?
Yeah, I mean, they have made it very clear that Aemond idolizes Daemon, is envious of Daemon. Like, you know, Daemon tries to assassinate him and Aemond's reaction is, cool, I'm stoked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, if you told Aemond, hey, you and Daemon are going to kill each other in an epic dragon fight above the magical island in the middle of the continent that, like, acts as the old god's connection with the planet. It's like, he would, like, pog out. he would do a Fortnite dance. Like,
yeah, no, you are completely right. Like, that is Aemon's wet dream, is to die in battle with Daemon in an epic dragon fight. So, yeah, no, that could totally work. I mean, one of the sort of interesting ongoing questions is that, like, you know, Alys births Aemon's alleged child. I wonder if that might even be some messed up, like, blood sacrificey sort of thing, because, like, you know, King's blood and Targaryen blood is magical. Maybe Alys has some plan to use that magic and sacrifice that child, which, again, like, it doesn't seem in line with how charming Alys is. Like, Alys is a pretty chill dude in Hot D.
yeah.
Like, I don't really see her sacrificing her own son for magic rituals, but I'm just trying to think of, like, why she champions this bastard of Aemond. Like, why would she do that?
I don't know. Maybe there's power in like an old gods Targaryen hybrid bastard thing, because, I mean, that's what Bloodraven is, and he becomes the last Greenseer.
I mean, maybe
that's what Jon Snow is.
Maybe Alys just kind of falls in love with Aemond a little bit.
That'd be very interesting.
I mean, Aemond is quite hot.
That's
maybe
true.
Alys is just kind of into that, and then she gets pregnant and she just wants to protect her baby.
That could be it, because like we talk about Alys in terms of being this, you know, old gods witch with a magical connection with everything, but she's also a human.
Yeah.
And she might just actually fall in love with this guy.
Yeah.
This terrible person who's destroying her homeland.
Yeah. It happens more often than you'd think. I mean, one of the things that I like about the show is how they've humanized Alys. Like, they talked it in the behind the scenes about how, like, yes, Alys is like this magic witch, but also, like, she's lonely. Like, she's in Harrenhal with these, like, old men and his gormless sons, and, like, she hasn't really got many people to talk to. And it's like, maybe she will just genuinely connect with Aemond on some level.
Aemond is also very lonely.
Yeah.
What do you think the future holds for Simon Strong's gormless sons?
Oh man, Aemond is gonna cut through them like tissue paper.
Because Aemond is gonna kill Simon Strong. Is he gonna make him watch his sons die? Also, is he gonna make him watch them eat the goose?
Eat the goose. Yeah, God, probably. I mean, that is one of the interesting things is that, like, in the books, Aemond puts all of the House Strong to death, and he forces Simon Strong into this farcical trial by combat in which he easily slaughters Simon. And it's mostly out of anger because of how Daemon has bamboozled Aemond.
Yeah, and he blames the Strongs on this.
Like, it's very funny that Aemond spends weeks like taking this army to Harrenhal, and then he gets to Harrenhal to fight Daemon, and Daemon's gone, and he's taken King's Landing in Aemond's absence. It's this very funny bamboozlement of Aemond by a far wiser, more experienced commander. And so Aemond takes out his rage on Simon and the Strongs, and it's great. It's another easy win that they can easily do in Hot D. But the fact that like Alys is going to be there, and Alys is going to stand there and watch as the Strongs are murdered, like
who are ostensibly her family.
Yeah. So will Alys try to stop Aemond, or
is she going to froth this? Is it going to happen in front of the Weirwood? Of course it's going to happen in front of the Weirwood.
Yeah.
Of course it's going to happen in front of the Weirwood.
Maybe that's why she's into it, and she gets like visions that like they share visions together, or maybe that brings Alys and Aemond together.
Hot.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of
oh my god, we're gonna get to see Gail Rankin and Ewan Mitchell make out. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm
not ready for that one.
I'm getting the Blu-ray for this one. Would you like to talk about Corlys Velaryon?
Corlys Velaryon. I mean, not really.
Yeah.
He's very it's sad to talk about Corlys.
It's sad because he doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Which is such a shame because he's a legendary sailor and political figure who does absolutely nothing in this season.
It frustrates me because like there's no point in Hot D Season 2 when I look at Corlys and go, there's the man who traveled across the world 9 times because he's a badass and he wants to prove himself, and he's the richest, most powerful guy, and he wants to kick heads and get gold and be dominated by his wife. Like none of that. You don't get any of that energy in season 2.
Enough sad boys in this season.
Yes.
We needed Corlys to be action man.
And I agree. And it's compounded by Daemon's slow sad boy, and Rhaenyra's slow sad boy, and Jace's slow sad boy.
Daemon being a slow sad boy is great, I think, and could have been complemented with Corlys taking up action.
Yeah. And that could have happened when he became Hand of the Queen to Rhaenyra.
Oh, yeah, his wife just died. He's just been given new political power. Let's get this ball rolling, motherfuckers.
But again, part of the tragedy here is that there is a climax to Corlys's arc that should have and probably was going to be in season 2 that they probably cut, which is Corlys legitimizing Addam and Alyn, making them his heirs, and trying to like right his wrong in having not been a parent to these kids and embracing them as Velaryon.
He's also going to participate in an epic battle.
Yeah. And we've said before that like they really should have had just a scene where Corlys is on the ship in the blockade and like Aemond on Vhagar has a go at them, and he fires scorpion bolts at Aemond and like trying to like actually show that he's like participating in a conflict.
Yeah, rather than just twiddling his thumbs on the docks for a year.
Yeah, and I've said it, but like the number of times they mention the blockade in this season, it's like 10 times they mention the blockade, and we only see the blockade like briefly once. So we have no sense of like what it is or what it means or what Corlys has to do with it.
I do want to issue a minor correction.
Yeah.
In episode 8, we were talking about how annoying it is that the blockade appears to be completely porous, like as the plot wills it.
Yeah.
The first time we hear about the blockade in season 2, it is made very clear that it is understaffed. So like it's there. It just isn't enough.
Well, I mean,
the explanation for how Alicent Orwyle, everyone like keeps drifting between Dragonstone and Driftmark.
But it's enough to stop
King's Landing.
It's enough to stop King's Landing getting food and creating a big headache for the Greens.
That's later in the season, but then even later in the season, Alicent gets the Dragonstone. So yeah, it's still strange.
Yeah.
Also, another minor correction. Actually, this one's a bit less minor. You were having a go at Ryan Condal for the Bar-M and Massey Sharp Point fiasco.
I was.
In episode 6, Corlys says, "Hey, Alan, we've got to go to Sharp Point to pick up Lord GRRM's son as a boatswain.
Yep.
So there it is. In the show, Sharp Point is owned by Lord GRRM. And Brian, I guess, misspoke or was referring to the Sharp Point as like vassals of the Massies. I don't know.
Gladys, this only makes Ryan Condal more wrong.
No, but the show is right, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. So why isn't Ryan?
Because sometimes you say do you always say the right thing when you're talking about your multi-million-dollar show?
I have never misspoken once. They did acknowledge that it's GRRM in the thing. I think like what might have happened in that after the episode segment was that the editors chop up sentences a lot.
Yeah, and the editors aren't as knowledgeable as, necessarily the people speaking.
Yeah, so for all we know, in that interview, Ryan went on a 10-minute tangent about the precise feudal hierarchy on Massey's Point vis-a-vis Aemond.
Entirely possible.
Ryan might have been completely on point, but the editors just chopped up his sentence as they do.
And that just really speaks to how, regardless of how much effort he puts in, it's not all up to him. It is he gets the last say on the show. Does he get the last say on the behind the scenes things? I don't know.
It is impossible that he has time to micromanage the editing of the behind the scenes segments.
And you know what? Maybe I should extend an olive branch. Maybe David Benioff was deceptively edited as well, and he didn't exactly mean that Daenerys just forgot about the Iron Fleet.
Yeah, but D.B. Weiss said that Stannis would objectively be a worse king than Renly.
He did say that.
And that is unforgivable.
I don't know how that could be deceptive
Jesus. D.B., my man.
And the thing with the Iron Fleet thing is that actually happened in the show. Daenerys did forget about the Iron Fleet. Whereas here, Corlys is it was GRRM and Sharp Point.
Look, I think the reason why everyone went off at Ryan over the fucking Sharp Point thing is that episode, that season felt like a disappointment and people wanted to lash out. And it's a really obvious target when the face of the show is saying something untrue.
About what amounts to be an extraordinarily minor detail.
In a segment that's aired immediately after the episode. Of course people are going to focus on that. It's not necessarily fair, but I think that's why people reacted like that. So Corlys...
Anyway, that was unnecessary.
Corlys was frustrating. Corlys kind of continues to do nothing for the rest of the show, doesn't he? He kind of does. He
kicks into action after the war is over.
Yeah, and what Corlys does for the rest of the story is he urges peace and reconciliation, and kind of no one listens to him until they do, is kind of what happens. And then Corlys, in the sort of aftermath, he plays a really important role,
and he becomes top dog after Cregan Stark leaves.
Yeah, which I don't think they're gonna include.
Yeah, the show probably ends when Cregan Stark leaves King's Landing.
I sort of see Corlys as being a bit like the Ned Stark of the Dance of the Dragons because he sets a good example that the younger generation follows, and he's someone who convinces people to have peace and honor and trying to do the right thing. And he's imperfect. He cheated on Rhaenys. He probably pillaged the East incidentally.
Yeah.
They keep saying that, Corlys became the richest man in the world because he traded to get all these exotic goods from the East. Yes, he traded for them. It's
what exactly did he trade with?
Yeah, I think Corlys might have British museumed his way through Eurasia just quietly. Corlys is cool, but they're not going to include his aftermath peacemaking in any great detail.
Unless they weirdly transplanted to during the war, which doesn't really make sense.
And he's going to spend a bunch of time as a prisoner next to Alicent's cell.
Oh,
Maybe
that can be funny.
Have some fun conversations.
They're just sort of gossiping between their cells.
I really hope that Hot D season 3 and 4 are just this whiplash thing where it's they do 3 different battles in one episode for 40 minutes, and then there's just 20 minutes of just Alicent playing a harmonica in her cell, just chatting with Steve Toussaint about I might have made some parenting mistakes, and Steve's yeah, I think I did as well.
Yeah, I vibe with that.
Yeah.
Man, I miss my wife. I miss your wife too.
Wouldn't that be great? So I
what do you do with Corlys?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, the story becomes Alyn's, right?
Yeah, I think it's about him passing the torch to Alyn because Corlys is going to make Alyn and Addam his heirs. Addam's going to die heroically.
Loyal.
And so it's kind of about his relationship with Alyn, I suppose. That's what the story's about for Corlys now. So,
Yeah, because Baela's going to go off doing her Targaryen thing. Rhaenyra's going to apparently go off doing some Targaryen bullshit. And, like, he's lost for Velaryons because, I mean, Luke was never a Velaryon, and same with Jace and Joff, but they're going to die soon anyway. He's left with nothing except for his bastard sons.
How many more nautical metaphors is Corlys going to get in?
At least one per episode. Or else I'm giving the show a 1 out of 10. Hey crew, it occurs to me while editing this that they might just kill Corlys during the war, because as we say, the story is going to be about him passing the torch to his bastard sons. Wouldn't it be good if we got to see that in the show rather than it being an implied future thing? Because Corlys isn't going to die during the war if they adapt it directly from the books. And because Corlys doesn't really do much in the rest of the war and he mostly kicks into action after the war is over, they could just kill him and give that role to Alyn. I don't know.
So Addam is a cool guy. You know, his is like a very simple story, I think. Like,
Yeah.
Addam's like the ambitious one. He gets a dragon and he's angry that people are prejudiced against him for being a bastard. So he proves himself by dying heroically at Tumbleton. They don't need, I mean, that's an
why
easy thing to
overcomplicate
get
it?
right. Yeah. Like, there's too many characters that they don't need to complicate him. I mean, one of the interesting complications in the books is that Addam supposedly visits the green men on the Isle of Faces.
Yeah. Oh, please don't cut that.
I would have assumed they would cut it, but like they put a green man in season 2. So they could put him on the Isle of Faces and he has visions. But like my question is like, what is the point
what
of
do
that?
we get out of that? Because George doesn't tell us in the book, like, what the fuck, why? What did he gain from doing this? What was the result of him consulting with the green men?
And it is like,
why Addam?
it's explicitly
so
like,
weird.
it's a weird rumor. Like the singers say that it happened, so they can very easily cut it. But it's like,
They put a green man in.
Like, I can't not want to see more green men,
course.
but I think, like, what's this going to do for Addam's character specifically? Is he going to know that he's going to die? Wait, why does we don't want every character to know that their death is coming? Like, I think it's better if it's just kept as a simple story where he's a guy who's suffered some bullshit, but he takes the moral high ground and he dies honorably to prove himself. And then his brother Alyn puts on his grave the word loyal. I mean, that's badass.
And everyone cries.
Yeah.
Everyone cries at that bit in the book. It's like, honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of the book. It might be my favorite part of the book.
Yeah. It's an easy thing to get right. And one of the things that is cool is that, like, they have established that Addam is really desperate for approval and he really wants to prove himself as a reliable guy. And Rhaenyra chooses Addam to come with her to Harrenhal. And I think that's going to make it really emotionally impactful when, like in the books, Rhaenyra turns against Addam and wrongly accuses him of plotting against her.
Because the two people that she didn't bring to Harrenhal, Hugh and Ulf, do betray her.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, if Addam thinks that he has earned Rhaenyra's trust, but then she betrays him, it's like, that's going to be powerful.
And is Corlys going to be torn up in that? Like, is Corlys going to side with his queen on that, or his, like, yet to be acknowledged bastard son?
Yeah, well, in the books, Corlys warns Addam and saves Addam from being arrested by Rhaenyra. So that could be so meaningful to Addam that his father finally not only accepts him, but like makes a sacrifice to protect his bastard son. That's beautiful. That's hard to fuck up. They'll get that right. They'll get that right.
Hope so.
What about Alyn?
Alyn. Where's this guy going?
I liked
pretty much every scene where Alyn did something in this season.
Yeah. Abubakar is good. I mean, as we've said before, like his like speech in the finale when he's saying you're a shit dad, like it was good, but like it was redundant because it's sort of the same thing he'd been implying all season.
Well, yeah, it's made redundant by those less good scenes. It would have been better if those scenes just weren't so the same.
They've changed his character a lot because in the books, Alyn wants to claim a dragon, but he gets burned, and so he fails to claim a dragon, and he instead becomes like a naval commander hero. And like in the book, Alyn is ambitious and bold and reckless, whereas in the show, Alyn is a lot more low key.
What do you think about that change?
I think that it could be a good change because like Addam is already
Give some
ambitious and seizing
contrast.
fire. So yeah, like it's kind of funny that they made Baela and Rhaena more similar to each other, but Addam and Alyn they made more different to each other.
Well, Addam and Alyn are actually like they do things in the war, whereas Baela and Rhaena don't, except for Baela fighting Aegon.
Yeah. So
So it makes sense to like give them a bit more character. It doesn't make sense to give Baela and Rhaena less character though.
I think Alan's story might be about forgiving his father. Because ultimately, like, Alyn is the surviving Lord of Driftmark. He's the one who carries on the Valerian legacy.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to, like, accept his father's legacy with all its flaws and, you know, accept that his dad was imperfect, but he's going to choose to rule in his father's family. Like,
Yep.
you know.
And like by becoming Oakenfist, by becoming this legendary sailor, he's sort of like, I will be my father, but I'll try to be better.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, I think that is, you know, connecting to that whole theme of intergenerational conflict and inheriting your parents' bullshit. Like, surely the healthy response to that situation and that reality is to try to be better than your parents. You know,
Yep.
you become
Sort of the Jaime story.
yeah. It's like my parents fucked me up, and my response is not to repeat my parents' mistakes or to punish the world for what my parents did to me. No, the correct answer is to try and be better and learn from your parents'
And
mistakes.
that, I believe that that's George's philosophy throughout pretty much all of his work, is that the response, like the human response to hardship and evil and darkness, is to try to be better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And obviously, you know, Alan's going to have the trauma of losing his brother Addam.
Yeah, what's that going to do to him? How is that going to change this character?
So yeah, I think all of this could work and be good. He's also, you know, probably going to fight in the gullet, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
Which there's going to be a lot of bloody characters at the Battle of the Gullet.
Yeah, we're talking about Tumbleton being this convergence of characters, but the gullet's going to happen first, and there's going to be a lot of people there.
There's potentially like 10 major characters at that battle. That's going to
Cool.
be a mess. I mean, Ryan has promised that the gullet is going to be worth the wait, he insists. You know.
It's a big wait, so we'll see about that.
Yeah.
So the elephant in the room with these characters, Corlys, Addam, Alyn, is Laenor.
Yeah.
What's going on with Laenor? Like, we're in season 3 of the show, and we're talking spoilers for Laenor, who supposedly died 8 years ago.
Yeah, look, I don't think they care about Laenor anymore. I've been like burning a candle for Laenor all through season 2.
Yeah, you're like Alicent in the church.
Yeah, man. If they were going to
Nettles.
mention...
Laenor. Harold Westerling.
Yeah, look, if they were going to mention Laenor, they would have mentioned it when Sea Smoke was claimed.
But it's bullshit, because like they gave him this weird, interesting ending where, I mean, it wasn't really an ending. He ran away and it's like, oh God, what's going to become of this guy?
Yeah, he fell off the boat.
Like right out of the bay.
Yeah,
He didn't make it to Essos.
He's not a good swimmer, as it turns out.
It's frustrating to me.
They have 16 episodes left. They have 10 battles and 20 major deaths. They have no time to talk about whether Laenor is alive or not.
Oh, but is that like, was that always the plan? Were they always just going to like ship him off to Essos and never talk about him?
No,
was he supposed to come back? Was he supposed to be relevant in the future again? And then it turns out that we only have fucking 24 episodes to do the last like 3/4 of the story.
I think they must have planned more than what they did, but they no longer have time for it. It is my suspicion. So what do you think of Alicent?
Oh God! Do you want to take my firstborn son now? Speaking about Alicent Hightower on the internet, my gosh,
yeah,
they're gonna crucify us.
Yeah, I think that fans, some of them are very angry about what happened with Alicent, because Alicent is one of the biggest changes from the books in Hot Day Season 2.
Well, in that she's a focus, she's an active character.
Well, yeah. Alicent becomes less and less relevant in the books, but in the show, she tries to make peace, and she has no fewer than 2 secret meetings with Rhaenyra, and she agrees to sacrifice her firstborn, Aegon, to end the war. And I think that scene with her and Rhaenyra, it was like emotionally meaningful, reflecting on their relationship and reflecting on how the politics messed with them. Yeah. Kind of messed up that she didn't mention Daemon. Like, that's an oversight.
What's up with that, Alicent?
Because they went to all that effort of establishing that Alicent cares about Daemon. But then it's like, well, what's your plan for Daemon if you leave the continent, Alicent? What's that about?
I guess you could see it as like an extraneous detail that they'll sort out later, but you would bring it up in the conversation.
And like also, you know, how did she get through the blockade?
These annoying little things about the scene.
Yeah, so like I feel like that scene, it is strong emotionally and thematically in a lot of ways, but it is weak in terms of the plot. In some ways,
it's mechanically bothersome. It's frustrating in the same way a lot of this season is,
and it's also frustrating because it's the end of that season, and the ending is lacking as an ending. So I think there's a lot of reasons why people were frustrated with Alicent's plotline. But as we've said, it's a really interesting question. What do they do with Alicent for the rest of the show? Given that in the books, Alicent spends the rest of her life locked up in the Red Keep.
It is really funny.
Yeah. And
like even after the war, she just continues to like just bitch about Rhaenyra.
It's wild in the books because like, you know, Rhaenyra's son, little Aegon the Younger, becomes king. And then Alicent, like for the rest of her life, wants this little kid dead. And like Alicent tells her granddaughter Jaehaera that you should murder your husband Aegon with a knife, Jaehaera.
Okay, grandma.
Like Alicent becomes this vengeful, scary witch who's so nasty that like they don't let her out and they can find her. Which of course, you know, you want to talk about like women being demonized by the historical narrative, like that's very much what's going on here. And that's
the characters literally talk about that in that scene.
Yeah.
Rhaenyra and Alicent, they're like, yeah, I'm going to be remembered as the most horrible person ever.
Yeah. So it does like fit the sort of meta narrative, the idea that Alicent may have actually had good intentions, but she got forced into doing messed up things like potentially sacrificing her son Aegon. But she may have actually had good intentions and she may have been unfairly demonized and blamed and confined. And like all of those ideas are relevant. But like at the end of the day, if they want Olivia Cook to be one of the main protagonists, what's she going to do?
She has to do stuff in the show
for 2 seasons. Is she going to sneak out of her cell to braid Rhaenyra's hair? Like, what? It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Well, an idea I've seen thrown around quite a bit is that Alicent will end up on Dragonstone and will be present for Rhaenyra's death.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how that's going to happen. Is Alicent going to run away with Rhaenyra when she leaves the city?
Yeah, Rhaenyra might take Alicent as a prisoner.
Yeah, maybe
to
like
Dragonstone.
when the riots start to break out, when Rhaenyra's rule is crumbling, Rhaenyra's like, oh my god, Alicent was right all along. We need to just do what we wanted to do as children. We need to run away, flee. We need to go east and eat cake.
Maybe Aegon will make Alicent watch him kill Rhaenyra and say, hey, Mom, you messed up. You chose her instead of me.
Yeah, I'm going to make you watch me eat your best friend.
Like Aegon probably will find out that Alicent tried to help Rhaenyra take his city.
Yeah, I mean,
that his
how else did Rhaenyra get in?
Wanted him dead, and he's going to look at his mother and say, you sacrificed me. You wanted me dead for the sake of this woman.
My father
so I'm gonna
sacrificed me for this woman.
Yeah.
And it's like Aegon, like legitimately prior to the war, like if there was no politics involved, has no reason to hate his half sister.
Yeah, that could be really powerful.
My grandfather Otto chose this. My father Viserys chose this. You chose this. Rhaenyra, you chose this. Everyone has conspired to make me kill my half sister, and I'm gonna make you fucking watch the consequences of your actions. And I think that could be so cool, especially if we have an inkling that Aegon actually doesn't hate Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
The problem with that, though, is that in the book, Rhaenyra's son is the one who watches her get eaten alive by a dragon.
It could be both.
It could be both, but the show is probably going to focus on Alicent because Aegon III isn't much of a character in the show because there's a toddler.
Yeah. Yep. I think...
And like people have a very strong attachment to that scene because, I mean, it's so visceral, a child watching his mother being eaten alive by a dragon.
Yeah.
And like they're going to be upset that it's instead that character's best friend instead of her son.
You know the worst possible way that they could ruin it?
It's Larys watching.
Aegon didn't want Sunfyre to kill Rhaenyra.
Aegon, no, stop! Just like Aemond, Vhagar eating Arax.
Wouldn't that be funny?
I mean, people worry that they might do that, and I like it. It could happen. They've been turning a lot of the horrible things from the book into misunderstandings between characters.
That they are really like testing my willingness to go along with that
But
shit.
I would love it if the show spent so long emphasizing that these people don't have control over these machines of war, but then there's this like special, magical, strong connection between Aegon and Sunfyre. We've seen it. They love each other and they've been through hell together. And Aegon is the one person who actually does have full control over his dragon. We saw it in season 1.
Yeah.
That how the Dragon Keepers were like, okay, Jace, you get in there, but Aegon has a really good bond with his dragon. He has full control over Sunfyre. Sunfire's always going to listen to Aegon, and Aegon's like, Sunfyre, I want you to kill Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the one time where a dragon is fully in line with its rider's intentions. I think that could be raw as fuck.
Hell yes. I love that. I love that. Sunfyre to me feels like the biggest innocent in this story.
Yeah, like up there with Helaena.
Yeah. I really, it's such a thing that they've emphasized. Like Rhaenyra, like maybe like 3 times has said, oh, Helaena. Oh no, Helena's innocent. I like Helaena. Don't let anything bad happen to Helaena. Rhaenyra has said that like 3 times.
Yeah.
Which makes me think like, I mean, Rhaenyra's going to feel terrible when Helaena dies.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder if Rhaenyra will feel guilty about it or if Rhaenyra will be connected to Helena's death in
Is
some
she going
way.
to blame it on someone else?
Yeah.
Maybe she'll blame it on Mysaria and that'll be a part of that rift.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be interesting.
Gosh, there are so many fucking opportunities to like to get more drama out of what's in the book.
It could have been 6 seasons. If they were given the episodes and they were given the
could be
budget, they
10
could have done all
seasons.
these things. That's the problem. Like all these things we have said, they can pick 10% of them. That's how many they can do.
Yeah.
Another thing with the death of Rhaenyra is maybe Alicent will be angry at Rhaenyra in that context. She's not going to be, oh no, don't kill Rhaenyra. She'll be like, Rhaenyra, you idiot sandwich. I gave you the capital.
Yep.
I sacrificed my son.
And look what you've done
and
with it.
you fumbled it.
Yeah.
You let the
You
small
fumbled the
folk,
bag.
you let the peasants kill 5 dragons.
Are you
What
serious?
are you doing, you fool?
Yeah, so when Aegon goes
You
on his rant
spudge.
about how, hey, mum, you let this happen, she's like, you know what? Yeah, fucking kill her. I don't care.
Yeah. And like, because Rhaenyra, like, at least in the books, she is a mess at this point.
Oh,
like, she
yeah.
lets herself go. Like, she totally.
And you know how in this season 2, episode 8 scene, Alicent's like, yeah, Aegon and Aemond are too far gone. They have to die. That's how this has to end. The same thing could play out in the season 3 finale when Rhaenyra is dying. Oh, it wouldn't be the season 3 finale, but you know, whenever that happens in season 4. Aegon's like, she's too far gone. She has to die. Alicent's like, oh my God, you're right.
Maybe Alicent is going to be like, I blame you for the death of Daeron. Daeron was the one good, sweet, innocent thing in this world that I created, and I blame
And she
you for
says
his
this
death.
in front of Aegon.
Oh, dude. I'm actually really excited for the Rhaenyra, Alicent, Aegon scene. Like, there's so
Alicent's
many
there.
ways that it could be awesome. Well, yeah, I guess Alicent might not be there.
It's a big assumption, but I sort of would love it if Rhaenyra just dragged Alicent along with her when she left the city.
I'm just not ready to see Maester Gerardus killed. I can't handle that.
I can't do it.
He's so good. He's too good for this world. Him and Helaena and Sunfyre are the 3 innocent people in this story.
Your Grace, I've just received word that...
Look, it's got to be said that, like, despite some of the weakness of House of the Dragon season 2, Alicent in Hot D is 100 times more interesting than Alicent in the books. Like, can we just conclusively say that the characters in the show are so much better than the characters in the book in so many ways. I mean, it's apples and oranges because the characterization is so thin in the books because there are so few words. It's only a brief summary. It's just
there's
a
no
Wikipedia
dialogue.
article.
There's no internal monologue. There's no time spent with these characters. They're like historical figures on a page. I feel as connected with Alicent as I do with Henry VIII.
Yeah, so the fleshed out, like flesh and blood, like complex characters with all their relationships and their motivations and their history, so much more interesting in the show because of course it is. And I think that the people who are angry about the changes, it only makes sense to be angry if you have your own like personal headcanon that is more like you're being what George is being in the blog posts, right? Like if you have an idea of who these characters are in your head and the show doesn't meet those expectations, of course you're going to be mad. But don't blame the show for not doing what you have in your head that no one else knows but you, you know? Like, I think that as an adaptation of the books, the show is mostly a success. Like, season 2 is really frustrating in a lot of ways, but for the most part, I think they've made a lot of really good decisions, and I think that the characters are like way more interesting. And I think that watching House of the Dragon is way more interesting than reading Fire and Blood, personally.
I do agree with that.
So yeah,
I mean, I find the book like more frustrating than season 2 of House of the Dragon.
Yeah,
I don't. It's a frustrating book for me.
The book
with a lot of awesome stuff.
Yeah, for me, it like the most fun and interesting parts of Fire and Blood are mostly like, ooh, Orwyle becomes Old Will.
Yeah, like these fun little connections.
Yeah, all that like interesting, tantalizing stuff. But like a lot of Fire and Blood is like. And then the maiden had a lot of sexy sex with the sexy, and it was a great scandal, and everyone in the kingdom. And then
it's like this
there
is
was
the
a
third
battle.
maiden having a sex scandal that you've read in the past.
Like the reign of Jair is like, oh my god, and then 1,000 crossbowmen from House Muton joined with Raymond Darry, who had 800 crossbowmen, who then crossed the bridge, but then Lord Lefford fell into a pit and hurt his ankle. And so he was carried on a litter, henceforth. Like, there's a lot of that in Fire and Blood.
Is that verbatim?
Pretty much.
Is Simon Vance reading it to me as we speak?
I was channeling my inner George there. So it's like, I don't know. I like this show, and I think that it's mostly a good adaptation of Fire and Blood. I think that's all that I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it needs to be acknowledged that it's a very strange book to adapt into a show.
Yeah, I think
it's nowhere near as straightforward as, I mean, even the Ice and Fire novels, not a straightforward adaptation. Adaptation is an art. It's a complicated fucking thing. And the word adapt is in it. There has to be changes.
Something that frustrates me, and again, like I don't want to spend too much time on like reacting to what like people on Twitter have said, like what the fuck ever. But like people are like, oh, why don't you just stick to the books? Why don't you just do a faithful adaptation?
It's
you just
literally
do what's
impossible.
in the books. It's impossible because the books are just a very brief summary. It's just a Wikipedia article. You cannot follow the book because the book doesn't have any scenes in it. It doesn't have much dialogue.
The book isn't a TV show. It's a book.
I think that given the challenges that they've had vis-a-vis HBO taking all their money away, I think they've done a pretty good job.
Yeah,
there's a pretty good job.
A lot of hurdles, and I don't want to give them a free pass. There's a lot. We've spent so many hours talking about this show, and a lot of our discussion has been about stuff we dislike. We're not giving it a free pass, but we still like it, man.
We have spent a double-digit number of hours complaining and criticizing about this show.
We could have spent that time with our families.
My wife wants to see my face again, but I have more complaints about Tessarion.
You have your face?
Actually, I don't have any complaints about Tessarion. That's one of the few things I have no complaints about yet. So
perfection, far. 10 out of 10.
So, anyway, Alicent.
Yeah. Of course we broke down when we were talking about Alicent. Of course.
Alicent spends the rest of her life being unhappy in confinement, and then she dies of COVID. That's what happens in the books.
Yeah, shame.
I suppose she'll end the season alive and unhappy. She could almost be like a narrator in the epilogue, you know?
Maybe she's the one writing House of the Dragon in a big book.
Her and Orwyle.
Yeah. Gwaaaaaaayne time.
What do you think about Gwaaaaaaayne?
It's Gwaaaaaaayne's world. Party time.
He's insane in the Gwaaaaaaayne. I think he's a cool guy. Like, he's just a foil to Criston, really.
Yeah, and I think he's a really good foil in that way.
Yeah, he works. He's layered. I think we've already said that, you know, we don't know how he's going to die. I guess he could survive. I mean, there's no reason why he can't survive, I guess.
Yeah, true. Like, he's not going to die in King's Landing as he does in the book.
Yeah.
Maybe he survives the battle that kills Criston.
Yeah. Maybe he, like, escapes that battle and comes to King's Landing and says, Criston was killed with arrows. It was crazy. What
if he winds up at Tumbleton?
Yeah, maybe.
What if he's the one that kills Ulf?
Maybe.
And Otto does some other shit?
Yeah, maybe. Many possibilities. I don't have a lot of specific predictions.
I've been ruminating on it since a few hours ago when you suggested that Gwaaaaaaayne might be the one to kill Criston, and I'm coming around on it.
Yeah. I mean, because I think the moral of the story is that Criston needs to just fucking die because he's creating so much carnage and he's incapable of changing his behavior. And Gwaaaaaaayne is someone who increasingly is seeing how messed up Criston is. Gwaaaaaaayne is getting a peek into the swirling void of nihilism that is Criston Cole. So he's more qualified than anyone. He has more reason than anyone to make sure that Criston call dies. Yeah. So if he betrays Criston, he makes the cold call and puts him down, that would make some sense. I mean, we're going to talk about Criston, but like, I really like some of the description of like Criston's death march south from Harrenhal and the Riverlands being ravaged and the Rivermen just using like these gnarly guerrilla tactics against him and disguising themselves as corpses and hanging men from trees.
Yeah, so like, what if Gwaaaaaaayne, like as Criston's lieutenant, is like, this is insane. Yeah. We cannot keep doing this, but you keep leading us south. We need to stop. I need to stop you. I have to kill you.
Yeah. Maybe Gwaaaaaaayne's like, we need to surrender
and
because,
like, if the show needs to cut another battle because HBO's not going to give them the $20 squillion they need, then maybe that's a convenient way of solving that problem, I guess. I don't like saying that, but it is a consideration that we have to make.
I guess another angle is that like the relationship between Alicent and Gwaaaaaaayne is important and interesting.
Do you think it needs a capstone? Like Gwaaaaaaayne shouldn't die on the campaign. He needs to come back and chat with Alicent again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd
love to see him chat with Daemon.
Me too. I mean, Gwaaaaaaayne has been a window into Alicent's humanity.
Yeah.
Like Gwaaaaaaayne is one of the only people who Gwaaaaaaayne is one of the only people who Alicent has been able to confide in this season.
Yep.
And so it would be really nice for them to be able to touch base and for Alicent to be able to talk about her feelings and for Gwaaaaaaayne to talk about his feelings. I mean, that's one of the things that Alicent did that was messed up is that, Criston tried to tell Alicent about his trauma.
Yeah, I was thinking about that scene when he was like, the things I've seen at Rook's Rest. And she's like, things you've seen? Like, she just wanted to know, oh God, did Aemond try to kill Aegon? That's all that she's thinking about. Whereas he's like, man, war is hell.
Yeah, it's messed up that Alicent didn't sympathize. And there's a sort of similar scene where like she asks Gwaaaaaaayne about like his feelings growing up and was it hard for him to not have parents? And Gwaaaaaaayne's like, yeah, whatever. Like Gwaaaaaaayne sort of fails to
you get on with it, don't you?
Up. So like, wouldn't it be nice if they get to reconnect later and Gwaaaaaaayne does open up about some of the shit that he went through and he could talk about Criston with Alicent. Like, I mean, Alicent's not going to get closure with Criston unless she talks to Gwaaaaaaayne, right? Because who else can tell her what happened to Criston and what it meant and how it felt? So it would be really cool if like Gwaaaaaaayne and Alicent got to speak again.
In all of their conversations in season 2, Alicent and Rhaenyra have not spoken about Criston. So that could be an interesting avenue for them to talk about that as well.
That's got to be a conversation that happens.
Another thing that we could see from Gwaaaaaaayne is...
I hope that someone expresses some pity for Criston in the end because
he is
reprehensible. Yeah. And Gwaaaaaaayne is the bridge to talk about Criston with Alicent and Rhaenyra.
What a great usage of this character to like transform him into this guy who's just sort of there and doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Into, the connective tissue between all these Hightower people.
Yeah.
I think another great thing we could see from Gwaaaaaaayne is, this scene, Alicent comes out and she's like, oh my God, I can ask Gwaaaaaaayne about my son. Like, I can finally learn about Daemon. I want a mirror scene to that if Gwaaaaaaayne makes it to Tumbleton and Daemon's there and he's like, oh my God, I can finally ask someone about my mother.
Wow. God, wouldn't that be heartbreaking?
What is my mother like?
Oh, and Gwaaaaaaayne will just say, she's kind.
She tries.
That could be fantastic. God, I hope that the House of the Dragon writers room is listening to this.
Yeah,
you can take any of these ideas, you can have them. If you're listening, put some kind of a horse joke. Just say the words, Gwaaaaaaayne was last seen a horse, and then we'll know that you heard this podcast.
Yeah, like if you're feeling good, stuff a 20 into an envelope and just
we'll split the 20.
Pass it across the Pacific Ocean and we'll figure it out. But I don't think they have time to listen to this, man.
How do you feel? I feel like Tom Glencarny as Aegon is easily one of the best parts of House of the Dragon.
By far one of the best. Which is a sentence structure that has never made sense to me, but I'm going with it anyway.
He is so charismatic and so funny and so evil and so pathetic. He's so great.
I love him in every way.
Just the expressions that he pulls.
He's pretending to be his own brother. Brilliant.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And it's also
you bore me. I'm bored. He's endlessly fun.
He's endlessly fun, and he also is very accurate to the books, I would say. Like, there's really no major contradictions to what's in the book with Aegon. So it's really one of those things where they just sort of elevated the material and did a good job with it. And like, I mean, one of the biggest changes is that Aemond deliberately burned Aegon, and he knows it. And so there's this sort of they become enemies. Whereas in the books, Aegon commissions a giant golden statue of Aemond, bigger than the Titan of Braavos. So clearly it's a different relationship in the books. But yeah, I'm really enjoying Aegon. And it's like, I guess the other big change is, you know, at the end of season 2, when Larys is like, yeah, like you can be beloved of the commons. And Aegon's like, yeah, I want to be the realm's delight.
I love that line so much. That little glint of hope he has when he says the realm's delight. Oh,
I love it as well, but it's interesting because in the books, Aegon basically continues being a dick. Like, he really brutally executes the Shepherd and kills Trystane and kills Sylvana and Essie. So, like, Aegon in the books is not trying to be beloved of the people. So my question is, like, are they going to make Aegon try and fail to be beloved in season 3 and 4? Or will he just suffer some bullshit and just become vindictive again?
I mean, who's his influence? The only person he has right now is Larys.
Yeah.
And like Larys is the one who like got him down the line of thinking the realm's delight. So like I think the idea is poisoned from the get-go. Maybe Aegon, like deep down, he does want to be that guy. Like maybe the best moment of his life was the few seconds between putting the crown on his head and merely ruining his coronation when all those people were cheering for him and he finally felt genuine adoration.
Very short honeymoon period.
Yeah, and like maybe he just wants to feel that again. He just wants to be loved, man. But like he doesn't know how because the only person hanging out with him at this point is fucking Larry Rat King.
I think of Sunfyre as a symbol of Aegon's soul. Like Sunfyre spends the last months of the war wounded, dying, tortured, and tattered. And I think in the same way, Aegon's soul is just wounded and tattered and dying.
But clinging to life.
So yeah, I would like to see him in a similar position where he is like trying to survive and trying to be decent, but he just can't. He's just too weak. He's too damaged. And it's like no amount of good intentions can make Aegon succeed at this point because his body is burned. He was never very smart or like capable or political. He doesn't know anything. So I think the tragedy might be that like he's kind of trying, but he's simply not able.
He wasn't equipped.
And so if it is that he's ultimately poisoned and killed by his mother and by Larys, the only ally he has,
yeah.
I mean, God, what a dark tragedy. And yeah, they have said in the show a couple times that his dragon Sunfyre is dead.
Yeah, what's going on with Sunfyre?
Yeah, it's
like Sunfyre can't actually be dead.
Yeah, so in the books, like Sunfyre is wounded at Rook's Rest and then like disappears and no one knows where Sunfyre flew off to. And then surprise, it turns out that Sunfyre and Aegon are on Dragonstone. So I expect that they will do that in the show. I expect that it'll be a surprise that, oh look, Sunfyre is alive. And the way that they could do that is that Rhaenyra ordered the Mootons to go retake Rook's Rest. So like Mooton could go to Rook's Rest and go, where's the dragon?
Yeah, wasn't there supposed to be a dead dragon here?
Yeah, so it'll be like, you know.
Or Aegon and Larys are currently heading north out of King's Landing. What if Larys is taking Aegon to Sunfyre?
Oh yeah.
What if he just knows?
Yeah. My firefly has told me.
Yeah.
Or maybe like they're on the boat to Braavos, but then Sunfyre swoops down and just like picks up Aegon, you know?
See you later.
That'd be cool.
You'll never walk again, but you may fly.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think, and I think also like Aegon could potentially be absent for most of season 3 because he doesn't have much to do. And in the book, he is missing. And
yeah, and that's a shame because he's probably the most fun character to watch.
It's true, but they have so much to do.
Yeah, maybe cutting another character. Like just leave him alone for a little bit so we can get a lot of other stuff done.
Leave him in the wings and then it'll be an even more satisfying, fun surprise when he turns up and surprises Rhaenyra on Dragonstone.
Because that's the thing, like I've been thinking about this. Game of Thrones had plot twists. When was the last like actual genuine whoa moment in House of the Dragon?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So I think that leaving Aegon, like just having the audience like put Aegon in the back of their mind, and then suddenly he's there on Dragonstone. He wanders out from behind a pillar in that big dragon cave, and Rhaenyra's like, "Oh my fucking god!"
I think they might be like self-conscious about knowing that all the spoilers are in the book and online, and they're like, "Oh, you know, twists aren't going to work." But like, most people aren't reading the Wikipedia, man. Like, you can do twists. It's okay. It's allowed.
You're allowed to do a little fruity twist.
So yeah, and I in my headcanon, I would like to see Aegon like spare Gaemon, but like kill Sylvana and Essie, who might potentially be Sylvi. I mean, because Aegon has a relationship with Sylvi as well, because Aegon brought Aemond to have sex with Sylvi and brought that squire to have sex with Sylvi in season 2. So I mean, like one of the other threads here is that like Aegon raped Diana, and Aegon has done these atrocious things. Like he has a trail of victims that he's left behind him, including those bastard kids that he left around.
Yeah,
so
those
there has
people
to be,
are still there. They're still part of the story. They're still part of the world. What's going to happen with them when he returns to King's Landing?
Yeah, so I think Aegon has to confront that. And I think that Aegon has to face the results of his crimes. And so I think that'll happen through Sylvi and Gaemon, and that could be really interesting. Yeah, sort of what happens in the books is that Aegon, you know, Rhaenyra dies, Aegon takes King's Landing. So Aegon like won the war, quote unquote. But Aegon, no one wants Aegon to be king, and Aegon is determined to get vengeance on everyone who betrayed him, and while everyone else is trying to make peace, and so that ultimately is why Aegon is murdered and poisoned by Larys. So I guess that can broadly happen in a similar way in the show.
Yeah, he's just like consumed with the intergenerational drama of it all.
And just lashing out and frustrated and not capable, and so yeah.
Yeah, because like for all the catharsis it'll give him, having Rhaenyra eaten by Sunfyre isn't actually going to fix anything.
And when Sunfyre dies of the wounds that it gets fighting Moondancer, Aegon's soul dies.
I really like that when Meleys dies and you see Rhaenys' soul exit her body.
God. Yeah, powerful.
It's a cool idea that like maybe the same thing happened with Viserys when Balerion died.
Yeah.
Even though like they weren't that strongly bonded because they hadn't been together very long, but you know, it can't mean nothing when your dragon dies, right?
I would watch a Jaehaerys prequel.
Oh, totally.
The death of Balerion. Oof.
What a moment.
It was Maester Melos who poisoned Balerion, you know.
Is that right?
Yeah. I heard it from Archmaester Marwyn.
Oh, he would know.
Helaena.
Oh, Helaena.
So George R. R. Martin said that Blood and Cheese is better in his book, and it's worse in the show because in the book, Helaena is forced to choose between Jaehaerys or Maelor, which of her sons will die, and she begs them to kill her instead. But in the show, she merely offers a necklace, and then she points out which of her children is Jaehaerys. I think that the show version was pretty good as well.
It was pretty good.
I really liked the moment where Cheese made eye contact with Helaena and listened to her and understood her in a way that no one else had in the story up till that point.
She speaks true, which is just like the fundamental truth of Helaena. She speaks true. That's the thing. That's what she does.
I thought it was understated and powerful in a good way. And I think that George's lurid, bloody version is good too, but I liked the hot
I
tea
think
version.
there exist 2 good versions of the Blood and Cheese story. No, actually 3, because the depiction in the season 7 extra is also pretty good.
So in the books, Helaena is described as plump and happy, and she loves her kids, and she participates a little bit in the war politics by convincing Aegon to send an envoy. And then Blood and Cheese murder her son, and then she is, quote, broken and mad, and she cries, and then she commits suicide. So pretty boring character.
Yeah.
I mean, like sympathetic, but pretty boring. And then in the show, they turned
An
Helaena...
uninvolved character.
They turned Helaena into a, let me check my notes here, a kooky, neurospicy, prophet, bug-loving entomologist queen.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, is that
but
accurate?
entomology refers specifically to insects, and I think her interests are a bit broader than that.
She goes beyond the 6-legged varieties.
That's right.
Yeah. Are crickets?
Crickets are insects, but we see her playing with a spider, and she's got scorpions and millipedes as well.
What do you call the study of bugs inclusive of those critters?
Well, bug is such a fraught word to begin with.
Fraught.
I don't know if there's a tis fraught, Helaena. I don't know if there's a word that embraces, all of the studies of all invertebrates, but the arthropods of all varieties she's into.
Arthropologist?
Maybe.
I like how they changed Helaena. I think that it is a dramatic change, but I think like Alicent, it's more interesting than what's in the books. I also think that like Daemon with his vision quest, Helena's experience of visions is like a better depiction of Targaryen vision prophecy stuff than anything that ever happened in the Game of Thrones show.
You mean like how she just like occasionally says something completely out of pocket that predicts the future in a weird, vague way?
Well, I feel like the implication is that the visions have messed with Helena's head.
Yep.
And part of why Helaena struggles to connect to the real world is because she's beset by these visions that just confuse and addle her. And it again, it connects to that idea.
Yeah, it makes the real world difficult for her to navigate.
And it, again, like power and knowledge is like a weight that damages you. Just like Viserys is destroyed by his crown, Helaena
and
is
his
damaged
dreams.
by her knowledge and his dreams. Yeah. And we've said again the tragedy of like Viserys and Helaena both having dreams but never getting to talk about it with each other.
Because like he never took her seriously, I guess.
And we've said before, it sucks that Helaena has never interacted with Dreamfire. It's the dream dragon. Why does the dreamer not interact with the dream dragon?
Did Rhaena, the previous writer of Dreamfire, like not this Rhaena, but the Rhaena from 2 generations ago, did she also have that sort of connection with Dreamfire? Did she have the dreams like Helaena does?
Yeah, I mean, Rhaena's a whole other
That's the
story.
character I would love to focus on a Jaehaerys era story.
Totally.
Like I've said it before, I think a Rhaena biopic would be so fucking awesome.
Something that we didn't talk about previously, I think, is how crazy it is that when Helaena talks to Daemon in the vision, Helaena doesn't bring up that Daemon murdered her son Jaehaerys.
Well, it makes it like, is Helaena cognizant that she's like speaking directly with the person Daemon who did that, or is she like? It's so strange. I have no idea how to approach it. Like, is she actually there conversing with the guy that did that? Does she know that that's what she's doing? Does he know that that's what's happening? I don't know.
But I mean, that's the problem. Like, if you make her so unaware and so not in control, then she's not a character anymore. If she has no agency, then she's not a character. So, and that connects to the prophecy free will stuff.
Well,
so
she says to Aemond, like later that scene, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like what you think you're gonna do. Does Helaena like? What would it matter if she brought up Jaehaerys to Daemon? What would that do?
When she said it's all a story, like, I know that breaking the fourth wall is like very like in fashion, but like we've seen so much fourth wall breaking. I don't want it to go further. Oh, before I forget, I noticed in the copy of Fire and Blood in the book, in like the little copyright section, it says that Fire and Blood is copyright Woe and Shade LLC, which is a reference to some obscure characters in one of George Martin's much earlier like 80s sci-fi, a story called Sand Kings, which references these characters Woe and Shade. And George Martin wanted to write a whole series about Woe and Shade, but he only ever wrote one. And so I think it's really cute as a really like deep cut Easter egg that apparently one of George's companies is called Woe and Shade.
Did he register
LLC.
Woe and Shade as like a shell corporation?
Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
What a funny guy.
Because Woe and Shade is like a interstellar like trading empire that trades in like haunted curios and shit, and so that's what Fire and Blood is copyrighted under. Isn't that cute?
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Helaena, they've made her different and interesting, and I'm glad that they have. I'm glad that they're doing something weird and ambitious with Helaena rather than just making her quote plump and happy and then quote broken and sad. And Fia Saban's performance is great. I think it's really interesting and powerful. So
I agree with all of that.
Yeah. So the unfortunate thing about Helaena is that all that Helaena does for the rest of the book is be sad and then kill herself.
Yeah, that's a downer.
So what are they going to do with that in the show? Like, she could certainly have some more weird visions. She could probably astrally project to a few more people. I could see her having a conversation with Aemond through the astral plane.
Or Alys. Maybe Aemond and Alys.
Yeah, I really hope that like after Alys watches Aemond and Daemon go down, Alys is going to like fist bump Helaena through the astral plane and like they're going to have been in on it all along.
Hell yeah, we did this, girl.
And then Helaena takes off her necklace and she was Melisandre all
Oh,
along.
and then she kills herself.
I think
Plot hole closed.
I think that Bloodraven from the future is going to cause Helaena to kill herself.
Yeah?
Yeah, because it's the war between the old gods' magic and the Targaryen dreams.
I can't tell if you're shitposting because like that's sort of you're sort of cooking.
I think that Helaena will commit suicide so that she can warg skin change into Dreamfire to live a second life in
shitposting
Dreamfire.
Everyone.
Because Dreamfire breaks her chains and then she tries to escape. So maybe Helena's trying to like avert destiny. Or maybe Helaena really was murdered by Larys.
Or Mysaria or someone.
Who was actually Nimble Dick Crab.
Yeah. Time travel warging from
so maybe
future.
Helaena... Here's my actual theory.
Okay, so this is going somewhere.
So Helena's daughter Jaehaera, who is going to be the future queen of Westeros, married to Rhaenyra's son Aegon III. Jaehaera in the books dies on the spikes of Maegor's Holdfast, just like Helaena dies on the spikes of Maegor's Holdfast.
Oh, so Helaena wargs into Jaehaera when she dies. And then kills herself in the exact same way.
Well, I was just thinking that maybe Helena's like haunted by visions of her daughter dying that way, and so she then she falls and dies on the spikes while simultaneously seeing a vision. So it's like she's experiencing her daughter's death while she's dying.
But the problem is the show isn't going to make it as far as Jaehaera's death.
Okay, maybe Helaena will poison Aegon. She will poison King Aegon,
Isn't that
her brother
after
husband.
she dies?
Well, they change the timeline, and then she kills herself out of guilt for killing Aegon.
In the future.
All right, different theory. Maybe Helaena, she just fell over.
I fell?
She just fell down.
Oh, no, I fell down.
She tripped and fell over.
Oh, onto the spikes below. I knew I shouldn't have put those spikes there.
Why'd we put all the... It's a tripping hazard. We need to put up a guardrail. Oh, wait,
that's the first thing that Aegon III does when he becomes king is he installs a guardrail.
I kind of like that energy from Aegon III when he's just like, I don't like any of you. I don't like being king. I'm just going to do some very basic, sensible things like bread and circuses, he says, or whatever.
There should be some plants in this room so that it gets a bit more oxygen.
Aegon's the first Targaryen who's like, you know what, dragons? No, they burn shit. I'm killing them. That's not. They call him the Dragonbane because all the dragons, they haven't revealed how, but I suspect that Aegon might have straight up
killed
them.
The last dragon.
I mean, there is a bit in the books that says that Aegon tried to bring back the dragons, which I think
that doesn't really make sense.
I think that's borderline being retconned, low-key, because that was written a long time ago.
It makes sense that later Targaryens would try to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes sense for Aegon's personality, his history, to try and bring that back, the dragons, because he sees the dragons destroy his family. Why would he want to do that? Why would he want to bring them back?
Well, Egg changed his mind and tried to bring back dragons later on. That's the curse of being a Targaryen.
Maybe he's haunted by the dreams again.
Yeah. And Aegon III, by the way, is one of those two little blonde toddlers who Rhaenyra has, who she sends off with Rhaena.
Both of them become king. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I'm so happy we're in the spoiler zone. We haven't been able to say all these spoilers before.
Say these basic true things about characters who've been in front of us the whole time.
So yeah, Helaena I think is interesting. It's going to be interesting to see why she kills herself. I mean, clearly the writers' room is struggling with this question because George R. R. Martin said that, Ryan's just going to make her kill herself.
But maybe he doesn't know. Maybe they've figured it out years ago.
Well, that's one of the other weird things about George's blog posts is that, he keeps saying, well, as far as I know, Ryan's going to do this. It's like, George,
you're an executive producer.
Don't you have his phone number? Can't you just talk to Ryan before you make this post? So obviously the relationship is broken down. So yeah, look, again, we're not going to try and speculate. All right. So would you like to talk about Aemond Targaryen.
Oh yeah, I'm always down to talk about Aemond Targaryen.
He's
so cool.
In my rewatch, I enjoyed Ewan Mitchell as Aemond so much.
He's epic.
His performance is so great. He just has so much seething emotion. No one seethes like Aemond. Like his menace when he's like,
oh my god,
betraying his
shot.
brother, and his vulnerability when he's with Sylvi, and his like frustration with Helaena and with Alicent. Like all of his relationships is so great. Fantastic performance, and just like his body, like his chin. When he hangs dong,
he's
like
perfect.
He's just like he's lean and angry. He's all angles.
He's a very
so
angular
sharp.
guy.
He cannot be embraced because he's so angular.
Yeah, like he's made of swords the same way the Iron Throne is.
Yeah, God.
And he like his personality is made of swords as well. This guy is constructed of danger and metal.
Fuck yes, he's pricklier than the Iron Throne itself. You get close to him, you get cut.
It's perfect. Ewan Mitchell's perfect.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's going to be so interesting what his relationship with Alys is like.
Yeah, this person who the Harrenhal arc with Daemon in season 2 is a prerequisite for what the hell is going to happen with Aemond. Like we've been shown that Alys can break these dangerous men down.
Yeah.
That these guys made of swords,
yeah,
she can destroy them.
Yeah. It's I mean Daemon was the entree for Alys, and now Aemond is the main meal, the challenge of how to.
Now, for all the Americans in the audience,
this,
by entree, Mr. Schwift means appetizer.
It's before you tip, but after you put on the ketchup.
Before you give your credit card off to whoever. America's a strange place.
Before you begin the 5-step process of acquiring a donut. Yeah, I fucking love Aemond. I love how they've given him an arc. In the book, he just seems like kind of a dick the whole time, but in the show, he has so many layers of vulnerability, so much of a slow transformation. I
wish we saw him ruminate more on Luke's death. Like, all we really have is that little scene with Sylvi.
He never really acknowledged the aftermath of that very well.
Like it's all unsaid, and a lot of this show is unsaid, and I like the subtlety, but I think that's one of the things that could have been stated outright, been discussed more concretely.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really looking forward to Aemond rescuing Alys from Sabbatha Frey at Harrenhal.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I hope so. I mean, they created this whole
thing,
extra scene of the Freys saying that they want Harrenhal. And in the books, Lady Frey takes Harrenhal kind of sneakily while Alys is there. And Aemond breaks her out of jail and Sabbatha hides in the privy. Like, fuck yeah, what a great little sequence.
They have 16 episodes.
Well, yeah, it is exactly the kind of...
But they did set it up. They did keep it in season 2.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that lady is Sabbatha.
I don't know who else she would have been.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess we've already talked about it, but I'm very intrigued by like when Aemond goes to his death with Daemon at the God's Eye, does Aemond know he's going to die? Because Alys has all this mystical knowledge and like
Helena's
it seems
already
in the
told
books
him.
as though, Helena's told him.
Yeah,
so
and then he has that conversation with Daemon.
So I mean, maybe this arc for Aemond is about like struggling to accept the inevitability of his death. Like, I mean, he's going to spend a lot of time burning the crap out of the Riverlands, like committing more atrocities, burning civilians at the villages around the Riverlands. Maybe that's him just like raging against the dying of the light, you know? Maybe that's him just refusing to accept the lot that he's been dealt. Because, I mean, like, Aemond's deepest feeling is that he's been wronged. When they cut out his eye and when they bullied him, and like he's never let go of that old scar.
Yeah, like Alicent asks, have the indignities of your childhood not yet been sufficiently avenged? And he just like looks off into the middle distance. Like, of course not. Are you serious? Look what they did to me.
So like maybe it's about accepting his death, but it's like, I don't want Aemond to go down easy. I want Aemond to go down fighting.
Yeah, maybe to the bitter end, he actually does refuse that he's going to die.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a few directions they could go with it. They're just going to stipulate on what the character in the books did, and we'll figure out what the hell was going on.
Maybe Alys will tell him, hey, Aemond, you should leave. If you fight Daemon, he will kill you.
Yeah, maybe
You should
Alys is like, oh no, you two are going to kill each other. It's going to be awesome for me personally. But then she falls in love with Aemond and like wants to, she, the prophetic witch, wants to prevent the thing that she's already prophesied. So she sends him away and he's like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know I'm destined to kill Daemon. So I'm going to kill Daemon. I don't care what happens to me.
That's classic ice and fire prophecy. You try and prevent it, but it just happens anyway. So I would love it if Alys is like, don't fight Daemon or you'll die. And Aemond is like, I must fight Daemon. That's the only way I can feel I prove myself.
Aemon's going to get the Blood Raven vision and think it's him. Although Blood Raven has 2 eyes in the Blood Raven vision.
Yeah, that's fucking weird. Well, yeah. I mean, Aemond could easily like, see Alys's visions and feel like he's the protagonist and he's the one who's going to unite the realm. And, that's one way of doing it. And Daemon can be, you idiot.
Like, you idiot. It's clearly Rhaenyra, except by that point, Daemon will think, oh, it's not Rhaenyra, it's Emilia Clarke.
Another thing is like, like Aemond gets...
Happy birthday, Emilia. It was the other day.
Happy birthday, Emilia. Another thing is that Alys is going to be pregnant with Aemond's child. Does Aemond have a plan for that child? Does Aemond want his child with Alys to take the throne? Does Alys...
Aemond thinks that child is the prince that was promised. He's going to Rhaegar himself.
Oh, shit, you're right.
Yeah.
You joke, I believe it.
No, that's real now.
I believe it. Like,
why not?
He will have his child with Alys and he'll think that, he has to die so that his child can save the world.
So there's 2 directions, I guess. Either Aemon's going to embrace the prophecy, dreamy shit, or reject it. We saw Daemon he rejected it at first and came to embrace it over time. Is that same story going to play out with Aemond? I don't know.
Is he going to become more mature or not? Because, I mean, Aemond for the rest of the story continues to be just like this impetuous, insecure, violent monster. He becomes one of the worst people in the story with the number of innocent people he murders unnecessarily. I mean, he's a villain. But,
very clearly.
But yeah, what will be the emotional conclusion? Yeah. I don't know. I fucking love you and Mitchell.
I'm excited whichever way it goes. Like, I don't... They could fuck it up, I guess, but both directions seem fine to me.
So we've talked about Otto already, I think. In the book, Otto gets executed by Rhaenyra when she takes King's Landing.
Yeah, like at this point in the books, we're basically done with Otto already. Like the last thing of note he does is get dismissed by Aegon.
Yeah, whereas in the show he's imprisoned and we speculate that he might be a captive of the Bees Breeze and that he might end up killing Ulf. Might be a cool thing for him to do. Tumbleton.
We also need to acknowledge there are a bunch of other possibilities for where he might be. He doesn't necessarily have to be a captive of the Bees Breeze, although he was on his way to Highgarden or Old Town, and we know that there's war in the Reach and the Bees Breeze are against the High Tower, so it does make sense. But, he could be, captive of the Greyjoys or in the cells of King's Landing. That'd be weird.
A captive of Larys, a captive of Jericho Lohar. Maybe Laenor's got him in his basement. All sorts of possibilities. Criston
unclear.
Cole. Yeah, I like Criston.
Crinsman cringe.
Christmas Crung.
Cringesicle.
Crondon Crunk.
Get your mouse off the screen.
So yeah, I enjoy Criston. I like how he's a monster, but you can sort of understand how he got there. I'm looking forward to his apocalypse now, downward spiral, nightmare, slog through the Riverlands. I really hope we see that badass Mallister lady. You know that Mallister lady who went up to Daemon and said, get out of my land. We're in charge here. This is our place. Like Criston is now invading and intruding on that land.
I mean, Aemon's going to go directly there. She's going to confront him and Criston. Yeah, that'll be sick.
And I think, again, it's sort of about free will, because I think Criston's whole thing now is that he's like, my death is inevitable. We're just marching towards oblivion. There's nothing I can do to stop it. And so sort of, I don't know, maybe Gwaaaaaaayne is like, Criston, you can leave. You can stop. And Criston just being unable to let go because of his trauma and because of his guilt and because of his fear and being destroyed by that. I think it could be really wonderful.
Yeah,
They've already done so much good. I think they can land this plane with Criston.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the books, he gets killed ignobly by some rivermen with arrows.
He becomes a porcupine.
He sure does.
I don't know if that's exactly how he's going to go out, but I would be perfectly fine if they didn't change that one.
The irony is that like he wants to be the great, glorious, noble
yeah.
knight, and he ends up just a corpse in the mud.
But by this point in this
wants.
story, does he actually want to be a great, glorious, noble knight? I think he wants to die.
Yeah. And it's all about how the institution and the expectation destroyed him.
Yeah, turned this plucky kid, this upstart, this like really promising young knight who unhorsed. He beat Daemon Targaryen in a joust.
Yeah.
Like that's incredible.
He had so much
like,
potential.
Look what they did to him.
Yeah.
If from his point of view, right? That like they did this to him.
Yeah. I mean, the way he sees it, Alicent and Rhaenyra messed him up. And, to some extent they did, but it was his free will and his choice to do the things that he did as well.
Young Rhaenyra didn't really understand it, but she did abuse him.
And also he's trapped in like extremely restrictive systems of oaths.
Yeah,
and
the same way
knighthood
that
and,
like everyone is.
And but more than most, because he's on the King's Guard and
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
sworn to bloody Aegon, and it's like
They make you swear and swear.
I think it's a bit like Aegon. Like Criston's a bad person who you feel sorry for.
If you don't feel sorry for him, that's perfectly fine too. This guy's a murderer.
Oh well, only a few times. Larys strong.
Now, this guy you got to feel bad for.
Larys is so good.
Yeah. Oh, Matthew Needham. Incredible.
I love his vulnerability. I love his evil. The way that he uses Alicent is so skin crawling.
Yeah. It's disgusting.
Politically,
This guy's
sexually.
disgusting.
He's got so many good lines. They no longer breathe our air.
He said that. That's incredible.
It's really good. Although I do have frustrations with Larys in season 2 because like in season 1 he was established as this is a guy who knows things somehow. He knew about the moon tea. He knows how to play everyone. He hears all these rumors. But in season 2 he doesn't know anything. We don't see him with any spies. He had those like fireflies who did arson for him. We don't see any more fireflies. They like established that he replaced all the staff in the Red Keep, but then Blood and Cheese get into the Red Keep.
There's never any stipulation on the consequences of that. It appears as though maybe that facilitated Blood and Cheese happening, but why? Like, is that even true?
Never follow up on that.
Yeah.
And like, there's all that fun speculation about is he a green seer? Is he a skin changer?
Yeah,
But
nothing really about that except for all the shit that goes on at Harrenhal.
And he does mention Alys, which is cool. I hope that gets deepened.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be weird when Aemond starts hanging out with Alys.
So there's a million little threads and possibilities, but it's like, will they follow up on any of this? I don't know. So in the show, Larys says, we're going to Bravos with the goat fuckers.
We're going to go fuck some goats.
And in the books, Larys just sends Aegon off to Dragonstone while Larys stays secretly hidden in King's Landing
He hangs
somewhere.
out in the walls like Varys.
Question mark, which is pretty cool.
Varys? Larys? Has anyone else noticed this?
I think at the last Larys scene is just going to be Larys in the mirror, just slowly shaving
No
his
way.
head,
And he puts a necklace on
putting
and
on
turns
the
into
robe.
Conleth Hill.
just anamorphs into Conleth Hill.
Oh, that'd be great.
That'd be fantastic.
Maybe is Larys a Blackfire secretly?
Whoa, secret Black Strong.
Daemon Blackfire hasn't been born yet.
So I think it's very funny in the books when Larys just pops out of nowhere, like he re-emerges from the shadows in King's Landing after Rhaenyra's downfall. I guess the implication is that Larys was pulling the strings and causing the riots and causing the downfall of Rhaenyra is the implication. And they do a bit of that this season, like implying that, Larys is the Master of Whisperers now when he talks about tending to the whispers in King's Landing. So that, something that I really want to see is like, how does Larys contend with Mysaria? If Mysaria is the rival Master of Whisperers for Rhaenyra, like Mysaria and Larys have to clash. Larys burned down Mysaria's house.
Yeah.
So there's got to be like a rivalry between Larys and Mysaria, just like the Littlefinger Varys rivalry in Game of Thrones.
Or maybe, and Mysaria ends up antagonistic to Rhaenyra as well. Maybe at some point these two actually work together.
Totally.
Like maybe Larys did facilitate Blood and Cheese, which was a thing that, Mysaria was somewhat involved in.
Yeah, season 3, we're just going to see Mysaria sharing a drink with Larys. Thanks for helping me with the murder, pal.
Thanks for burning my house down. The insurance payments on that were through the roof.
You've saved me so much in rent. Yeah, I mean, he's described as a great enigma in the books, and no one really knows what Larys's goal is in the books. I mean, he wants power. Like, I think that's fairly clear in the show, especially when he wants to be Hand of the King, and he wants power, he wants influence.
That scene somewhat frustrates me because, like, did Larys really fall for that? Like, Aemond laid the most obvious trap.
Yeah.
And Larys just, like, took it hook, line, and sinker. Like, really?
I think they just wanted to make it obvious to the audience that Larys has become incapable of controlling Aemond and therefore puts all his eggs in the Aegon basket. The Aegon egg, the egg basket.
We've hidden eggs all over the keep and we're going to do a hunt on Easter morning. We've hidden Aegon in tiny little pieces just after Larys has poisoned him. I've hidden an egg somewhere.
It sounds like the worst game show of all time. Finding Easter eggs with Larys Strong, the sexual predator, in the haunted castle. That's not going to be a good time. So in the books, the war ends, Cregan Stark takes over, and he starts judging and executing everyone.
Pointing
who did
fingers.
Bad things. Larys poisoned Aegon II, which is a whole interesting emotional thing because in the show they've established this emotional connection between Larys and Aegon. So like, it's kind of the ultimate betrayal for Larys to poison Aegon, the one person who he seems to kind of relate to.
So maybe it's not Larys, maybe it is Alicent.
Yeah, maybe Larys is wrongly blamed. Like, wouldn't it be funny if...
That's the one thing he didn't do.
Yeah.
He did everything else horrible except kill Aegon.
Yeah, Larys is executed for the one crime he didn't do.
That would be very funny.
That would be fantastic.
And also really, really, really sad because, like, what if he actually just loves Aegon more than Alicent does?
Oh my... irony upon irony.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think Larys turned to Aegon for selfish reasons at first, but I think that over time, Larys might genuinely come to care for Aegon. So, yeah, being blamed for Aegon's death, and maybe, yeah, God, that would be fantastic. So, yeah, Larys gets beheaded by Cregan Stark. And you know, it talks about how, you know, Cregan sentences a lot of people to death, but, you know, Corlys doesn't get killed because everyone loves Corlys, and Orwyle doesn't get killed because he's a cool guy. One of the only people who does actually get killed is Larys, and it's because he has no allies, he has no friends, because he's betrayed everyone and he's screwed everyone around. So
like,
the
maybe
idea
if he didn't do that, he'd make it through the war.
The tragedy of Larys, like maybe actually becoming a little bit less of a monster in the end, but then being killed anyway is kind of great.
So obviously there's a weirwood in the King's Landing Godswood that is not there in Game of Thrones or the books. So obviously Cregan Stark is going to behead Larys Strong in front of the weirwood, like Dadoy, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe House of the Dragon has a plan for why that weirwood isn't there in the future.
Yeah, I think they've almost...
Is Rhaenyra going to burn down a weirwood tree? I don't fucking know.
Oh, that would actually be sick if during the capture of King's Landing by Rhaenyra, she burns the weirwood tree.
But why would she do that?
Enemies are there.
Maybe the weirwood burns as Aemond and Daemon kill each other above the God's Eye and the green men are watching on.
Whoa. Like every weirwood in Westeros simultaneously lights with fire and burns for a moment and then stops and the tree is intact.
That's fucking wild.
As the old gods are swallowing the dragons into the lake.
Whoa.
Holy shit.
But then the one in King's Landing, the seat of the Dragon King's power, continues to burn down. It's the only one that actually goes all the way down. And then Cregan executes Larys on the stump.
Oh my God.
You know, the strong, the old gods guy.
Hell yeah.
Dude.
I mean, it would just also be awesome if like Larys is killed in front of the King's Landing weirwood and he begins his second life in the tree.
In the weirwood.
Because that is like we've seen that happen canonically. Like Varamir, when he dies, he goes into the weirwood trees, and it would make perfect sense for Larys to do that, even if he's not necessarily a green seer as such.
But then it's like, what happens to that tree?
Maybe the tree dies because Larys' soul is so twisted.
Yeah, maybe Larys gets killed and the tree immediately begins to decay.
Wow. Well, Larys like goes into the tree and Cregan's like, you know what? Fuck that guy. We're going to destroy this weirwood.
Cregan Stark.
This guy doesn't deserve an afterlife. Like that's like the ultimate like double tap is to like kill the person and then destroy their afterlife.
Or maybe Cragen's like, you know what? King's Landing, this is no godly place. I'm like, you guys don't deserve a weirwood, but no, that doesn't make any sense. Why would a Northman chop down a
Taking my
nearwood?
tree home with me.
And then we see him put that weirwood in the Winterfell God's wood.
You are undeserving of my god.
And he steals their tree.
Damn. I will not permit you to pollute my afterlife.
Wow.
Your soul is too twisted to live on eternally.
That's so cool.
Shit, man.
Do you think that page from the book about Nymeria is going to come back again? Do you think Alicent's going to keep it with her in the cell?
That's a ratty old piece of parchment at this point.
I guess Rhaenyra has it at the moment, doesn't she?
It might be interesting for Rhaenyra in the context of her rule of King's Landing because Nymeria was like this proud female warrior who changed the politics and culture of Dawn.
Whereas Rhaenyra is going to fail to change the politics of Westeros.
Yeah. And it reminds Rhaenyra of like the idealistic, hopeful woman who she once was.
Yeah. So maybe it'll be invoked when Rhaenyra needs to run away. Maybe she has some drastic conversation with Alicent.
Mysaria could say to Rhaenyra, I thought you were going to be a new Nymeria, or
Yeah.
I thought you were going to change things. Yeah, all of that is possible.
I'm excited for the rest of this show.
I'm getting more, the more we're talking, the more excited I'm getting.
Yeah.
There's no way it's going to live up to all of these wild speculations, but like there is so much potential.
Yeah, again, as you said, like they can only do 10% of what we're talking about. But if they do,
It's still
it's
sick.
probably still going to be good. Or maybe they'll have ideas that we didn't think of that are good.
It's possible that these professional writers might actually have much better ideas than us. So Tyland Lannister is an interesting character.
Is he?
I think he is. Because he starts out as the browbeaten bureaucrat, and he becomes a bit of an overproud counselor, and then he becomes a pony for Jaehaerys to ride, and then he is forced to mud wrestle a pirate, and then he gains a bit of confidence, possibly after having sex with said pirate.
So it's sort of like he has this unearned confidence from being like he starts out life as being Jason Lannister's younger brother, and he's like a he has to play Luigi whenever they you know that feeling.
That is the perfect description. It's all about the second son energy, and Luigi to Mario is the ultimate second son.
I mean,
you
not
nailed it.
Luigi himself, because Luigi is actually like cooler than Mario. I mean, like he's a scared. We don't have time. But
Well, you see, Luigi is tall, but
Yeah, exactly.
also thin.
but also tall. What a weird line. What a weird scene.
Surreal stuff. You can really taste that they couldn't change the
But I mean,
script.
he has the energy of the younger brother who was forced to play Luigi. He had no choice because Jason just was Mario, right?
Yeah, he had to play with the controller that wasn't plugged in.
Exactly. And then over time in King's Landing with a position of power, he like just sort of came into this, oh yes, I'm the master of coin. Do we really have to have this meeting when the king dies? And then like over the course of this season, Aemond gets into power and he has to deal with this pirate, with all these pirates. And he's like, oh God, I'm actually nothing.
Yeah.
And then he defeats Shirako, and Shirako's like, you know what? You've actually got something. And then he glues his shoes to the deck of the ship, and he feels like he actually has earned a bit of confidence.
Yeah, he low-key has a great arc, none of which is in the books. Like we don't hear much about Tyland throughout this period.
No.
But Tyland does have a very fascinating future in the books. So this may shock you, but when Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, she captures Tyland, and she wants to know where all the gold is that Tyland secreted away.
Where gold?
So Rhaenyra has Tyland brutally tortured, and Rhaenyra's torturers remove Tyland's eyes and his ears and his penis and his fingernails and his toenails.
Not the toenails.
They
Sorry, go on.
I guess I should have saved the penis for last. So
Ramsay Bolton says.
So Tyland gets like horrifically mutilated, which of course is, you know, a pretty interesting thing for Rhaenyra to do.
Yeah, Jeezy Kableezy Rhaenyra. You taking something out on him or what?
And Tyland survives that horrific mutilation, and in the end, he becomes the hand of the king to Rhaenyra's son Aegon III. And the book talks about how it's so interesting that Tyland was horrifically mutilated by Rhaenyra, but Tyland is loyal and hardworking as a servant to her son, Aegon. And Tyland, by all accounts, works really hard to do the right thing. And he's capable and adept, and he's a pretty good ruler and a well-intentioned ruler working under King Aegon III.
So that is pretty extraordinary. It's
an extraordinary story. And ultimately he ends up dying of the same pangolin flu that kills Alicent. But he's this kind of quietly heroic, enigmatic character. And like so many of George Martin's characters, he is unfairly hated and maligned, and he's considered a nefarious, sinister, masked sorcerer, when in actual fact he's just kind of doing his best. So it's like, wow, what an interesting end to this character. And I fear that they won't have time for any of this because the Hooded Hand stuff is much later. And I just don't think they have time for this, and they probably don't want to have to cut off Jefferson Hall's ears and nose and penis.
Well, look, they scooped out Paddy Considine's eyeball.
So they did. Yeah, I mean, this is why these actors are unionizing. I mean, they're really putting their eyeballs on the line for this show. But
except that monkey. I did look into it, and the monkey is not...
The monkey is non-union.
It was a scaboon, although I do need to issue another minor correction. That was a rhesus macaque, everyone. And her name is Rosie.
Yeah, we really dropped the ball by not making the scaboon joke and also not making the pronoun pirates joke.
I that was an on-screen correction. Thank you very much.
We were almost there, but not.
Sometimes the cooking in real time doesn't pan out the way it should.
So
we need to take those improv classes.
Yeah, we've got a lot of lessons ahead of us.
Yes, and Tyland Lannisters. I hope they don't just execute him. I hope that they keep him around, even though he's not going to have the time to fulfill his actual full role in the book.
I fear that the show really wants Rhaenyra to be sympathetic, and therefore they won't have the balls to have Rhaenyra brutally mutilate Tyland.
That's like the litmus test.
They'll blame someone. They'll blame Daemon. They'll blame Mysaria.
Or Larys somehow.
Yeah, I fear that they won't hold Rhaenyra accountable, and they'll try and whitewash her more. But
yeah, that's my litmus test. If they don't have Rhaenyra do this I mean, it doesn't have to be that gruesome, I guess.
Yeah.
But if they don't have Rhaenyra tortured Tyland Lannister, then they're sort of letting her go by.
And one of the ironies in the show is that they established that it's Larys who secreted most of the crown's gold. So Tyland won't even know where the gold is, which makes it even more tragic.
That's right, because he was Master of Coin and Larys was never Master of Coin.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other bucket of worms. We talked about the storming of the dragon pit when the shepherd leads the peasants to kill a bunch of the dragons. Which is a, catastrophic event for House Targaryen. The beginning of the end for them, really.
Pretty important.
The death of 5 dragons.
Yeah, it goes beyond Rhaenyra and Aegon. It's like, if they had dragons in the time of Aerys II, Robert wouldn't have won.
And it's like, it's the chickens coming home to roost. It's like, hey, the 99% of the country don't want you to fight this war. The kings are only legitimate if they do right by the people. And so it's also about the people rising up, and that's why I hope they lean into some of the Gaemon, People's Revolution, wanting equality stuff. And it's also an opportunity to talk about bloody Rhaenys and Meleys killing all those civilians in the Dragon Pit. They've been stubbornly refusing to acknowledge that all series, but the shepherd should be up there saying, hey, it was messed up when Rhaenys stomped on all of our children.
They did it then and they'll do it again, and we've got to stop it from happening. So let's go kill all those dragons.
And as traumatic as the storming of the Dragon Pit is, the shepherd's right. He's got some points. The dragons are pretty bad. Be funny if the maesters are involved.
Maybe the shepherd is Melos. He's not actually dead.
Hell yeah. He just cut off his own hand.
Yeah. To fool everyone.
They won't recognize me if I don't have one hand. That can't be Melos.
Everyone knows
man
Melos
only
has
has
two
one
hands.
hand.
Yeah. It's a flawless disguise, like Laenor's hat.
So we talked about Sylvana and all them. We talked about how Harold Westerling has to come back at some point. I think it'd be cool if we get some resolution on the Dragon Keepers. Where did they go?
Yeah, what do you do when you abandon your ancestral home and the religion that, the family whose been like funding your religion for the past 200 years.
I like how the Dragon Keepers, like they seem like cool dudes, but if you think about it for 5 minutes, it's like maybe it's bad that this cult worships the empire of slave dragon Nazis.
Blood mages.
Like maybe that's not a good thing. Like maybe worshipping at the altar of the Inogrion is perhaps bad.
Uncool, maybe. Well, who are you to question their culture? But it's difficult for me to see how they're going to come into the story again. I think it's just going to be discussion about them, if anything.
Yeah, again, 16 episodes, they ain't got time. We might never see him again, but
which is a shame.
You know, I mean, Daemon in season 1 talked a lot about like the legacy of Valyria. I mean, Viserys made that whole model of Valyria, so they have talked a lot about the legacy of Valyria. So I think it does make sense for them to tie that up and to sort of say, maybe that should be left in the past.
And maybe the legacy of Valyria is not that cool. Maybe Daemon's the one who says that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now that he's like had to reevaluate fucking everything.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to continue to reevaluate. So at the end of season 2, he's like, yeah, man, Rhaenyra, she's the coolest and she's going to be the queen and it's going to be for the fate of mankind and all that. And then later on, when Rhaenyra turns out to be a piece of shit, he's like, oh, hang on. Maybe all of this is fucked. And it's like, I have to now recontextualize my understanding of the Valyrian Empire.
Because the philosophy of all of these stories ultimately is... It's not about the fire and the prophesied hero. It's not about the guys who like turning into trees. It's about humans trying to live well and trying to do better than the past generations and trying to live for something greater than yourself, which is for others. That's what they have to land on in the end. So I talked about Daeron at Tumbleton. I think that Daeron can kind of be like a little microcosm of the whole story because like Daeron... I pronounce things differently, sentence to sentence. I know.
Duran.
I do it just to annoy you.
Thank you.
So Daeron is described as this nice, gentle kid, but he sees horrors at Tumbleton and he's horrified by them and he becomes less gentle as a result and he authorizes the assassination of Ulf and HUGH and it's this whole thing. So I feel like he's sort of like a speed run any percent turning a normal kid into a monster via war. So he kind of is like a mini version of what happens to every character, which is they are corrupted by war. So,
I mean, let me know when Benji Blackwood shows up.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if he will. I hope so.
That's sort of what we got left in this chat, I think, is just all these other minor characters. Will they turn up? Because there are lots and lots and lots of minor characters in the books. You know, Garibaldi Grey and Roddy the Ruin and Kermit Tully as well as Oscar Tully and fucking Elmo Tully and all the other...
We won't be seeing them.
Sesame Street characters. And yeah, it doesn't seem like they're likely to be included. I hope they include Black Alley Blackwood, who hooks up with Craig and Stark.
Yeah, that seems more important than Kermit Tully, I think.
Yeah, but I mean... 16 episodes.
Yeah, but like she plays a role in the end of the story. But it's also like sort of out of nowhere if it's like just there.
I mean that's the trouble with writing a history book is that history doesn't end. History doesn't have neat start points and end points, and I think that's kind of part of the point of Fire and Blood. So like there's a lot of characters towards the end of the story of the dance who their stories are just beginning.
Yeah, and they like emerge from the sidelines and become prominent in a way that doesn't really make sense at the finale of the 4th season of a drama television program. Yeah.
But like, I mean, there's ways that they can do it. I mean, they've established Jane Arryn, they've established Oscar Tully, they've established Sabbatha Frey, they've established that Malister lady. Like, if a lot of those recognizable characters turn up and like they are the new blood, they are the next generation, they are trying to make peace, they are trying to do better, that could accomplish, and you know, Rhaena and Baela, I mean, that can accomplish a lot of the vibe of what's happening in the book.
Oscar Tully is a good example. Like, he's there, the audience is going to remember him because he like made such a remarkable impact on the Daemon plot. Yeah. And, you know, I think his presence at the end of the story is going to be important alongside Craig and Stark.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that he might have a bit of a Benjicott Blackwood arc where...
Yeah, he becomes hardened by this disgusting war he finds himself embroiled in.
But maybe unlike the adults, he will choose not to stoop morally and he will remain upright and he will really try to be a decent person and a decent ruler despite all the horrors around him.
That would be neat.
Yeah. He did admire his grandfather Grover after all.
Yeah.
He rejected Daemon, you know? He stood up to Daemon. He stood up to moral corruption.
Hell yeah. Good for you, kid.
That was a great performance by that
Yeah,
kid.
good work.
That was great.
I would like to discuss also a character who did not appear in the show, Sarah Snow.
Yeah.
We sort of jumped over the scenes of Jace and Criston in the north.
Yeah.
So in the book, there's all sorts of stories about what Jace got up to on his travels between Dragonstone and Dragonstone, where he stopped in the Vale, he stopped in White Harbor, he stopped in Winterfell, and
The three sisters.
Yep, and he supposedly had an affair with bastard Stark Sarah Snow. And none of that happened in the show. In fact, he goes to one of the places he doesn't go to in the book, the Wall.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice. I mean, they didn't need to take us to Criston and the North and the Wall. I mean, it's nice to introduce us to Criston because he should be at the end of the story doing the judgment and the
They
Hour
can
of the
cut
Wolf.
a lot, but I don't think it makes any sense to remove Criston Stark from the end of the story. Like, he's a vital character.
I really hope that Criston has the gravitas, you know, because they really emphasize in the book that like Criston takes power just through force of personality. Like he is so commanding, he's so assertive. You just cannot argue with this guy, and so he cows.
And like Corlys Velaryon is in the room.
Yeah.
So that's what he has to contend against.
He just steamrolls over Corlys, steamrolls over the Tullys, steamrolls over everyone, and for
like,
a
no,
short
you Southerners
period
and
of
your
time,
fucking
he rules.
bullshit. We're done with this. I'm in charge. This is over.
So I feel like it's going to need to be a different performance than what we got from Tom Taylor as Criston at the start of season 2. Like he's a bit soft, you know. So I would like to see him grow out a beard. I would like to see him have some blood on his boots. You know, I want to see him having sort of proven himself a bit more to have that gravitas. I could see it working.
I think he can do it. It needs to be different from this.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, it is interesting that like you know they bothered to include Criston and Jace, but they took out all the interesting bits.
Well,
they
as
took
we
out
say-
Sarah and they took out Vermax laying eggs. And,
Well, as we say, Criston is vital to the end of the story. Sarah Snow never mentioned again.
yeah, but it's tantalizing.
It
though,
is
because like,
tantalizing,
did
but-
Jace secretly marry and can't marry Baela because he married Sarah?
Well,
like, ooh.
No, he didn't. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the difference between Fire and Blood and Hot D, because Fire and Blood has the luxury of being able to throw out 1,000 fanciful
Oh,
anecdotes.
this could have happened.
Yeah.
Like George gets to like just sort of dance around some issues, throw some glitter, and like, oh, wouldn't that be fun? And like, and House of the Dragon is a TV show where we're being shown things that happened, and you can't just do that.
Yeah, Hot D does not have the luxury of including every little thing. So George Martin can complain all he wants about the little anecdotes that aren't included, but they can't include everything. And David Zaslav's breathing down their back trying to pinch pennies out of the budget. So it's like,
Which is honestly insane for what you want to make your flagship franchise.
It is insane. I mean, like, none of this was ever meant to be adapted to screen anyway. So the idea that you would compromise.
I get the impression that like George was pressured to write Fire and Blood because they wanted something to adapt.
I got the impression that he wrote Fire and Blood because he made a book deal with Random House for
and-
the Winds of Winter, and he didn't have the Winds of Winter, and they said, give us something.
And he had
gave them
300,000 words of Targaryen history notes, so why not?
Yeah, it's not the Winds of Winter we wanted, but it's the Winds of Winter that we got.
And now it has its own Winds of Winter that we won't be getting. Anyway, Sarah Snow, Vermax eggs. Yeah, like I'm not too cut up that it wasn't included, honestly.
So, dragons.
What about them?
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, a few.
Am I mistaken? In season 1, episode 10, did Daemon say that there were 3 wild dragons?
Yes.
So canonically, Grey Ghost and Cannibal
Exist.
Yes.
On Dragonstone.
Are they just going to Grey Ghost and Cannibal died off screen? Are they going to do that?
I don't know.
They brought up Grey Ghost and Cannibal.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with them?
Because Grey Ghost, like their presence on Dragonstone is important to the plot later on.
Are they really going to include Tom Tangletongue and the mysterious murder of Grey? Are they really going to include all that?
I doubt it.
I doubt it too. They could just say they're still alive, I guess, because isn't the cannibal still alive?
Yes,
Yeah.
the cannibal flies out over Corlys's funeral when he dies much later on because, of course, Corlys was secretly Cannibal's dragon rider.
Of course. Oh, God, that's a good theory.
Haven't you heard that one before?
No,
I'm sure
that's
we've
good.
discussed this before.
Have we?
No, it's awesome.
I don't remember anything that we say in these videos.
I know, it's like out my mouth and gone forever.
I guess they can just leave Grey Ghost and Cannibal alive, but they do also have the opportunity of doing the Grey Ghost mystery if they want. I mean, it could give Baela something to do. The one thing Baela does, apart from fight Sunfyre, is like want to investigate the mysterious death of Grey Ghost. And it's a dragon murder mystery.
Who doesn't
want that? Are you
that?
not going to include the dragon murder mystery? Are you crazy?
And their presence is important because it makes it like just existing as a dragon around Dragonstone like terrifying.
Yeah.
Scary because the cannibal is a dragon cannibal.
A draganable.
So it makes Sunfyre that much more precarious on Dragonstone.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not too mad if they don't do anything with Grey Ghost and Cannibal.
It's just that it was mentioned in episode 10 of season 1.
I would think it's cool if Orwyle poisons Aegon's dragon's eggs in the end. That would be cool, but they probably won't do it. And that's basically everything that I can think of that is important that might happen in season 3 and season 4.
That's the whole show.
That's it.
We did it. If anything happens that we didn't talk about, no, it didn't.
It only took us 4 hours to briefly outline the most essential plot points in the next 16 episodes of television.
And I'm going to be brutally honest, Nettles came up like when we were talking about her directly and never again.
Nettles is not that. Well, but Daemon's really...
See, that's the thing, right? Is Nettles is like extraordinarily important to like one thing.
There's just a lot of extraordinarily important things.
Yeah.
So let's try to imagine how this might fit into 2 seasons of television.
Oh God, we're season crafting like on the seat of our pants. Oh crap, I wasn't prepared for this.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only sort of question is where is the break between season 3 and season 4?
Well, obviously they're going to plan it, and then at the last minute they'll have 2 episodes cut, so we have to account for that.
So that means that season 3 will be 6 episodes long, cut down from 8, and then season 4 will be 4 episodes cut down from 6.
Cut down from 6, and like accounting for the lost 6 episodes before it.
Yes, and then they conclude the story in webcomic form. So
the series gets purchased by Yahoo Web.
No. So season 3 opens on the Battle of the Gullet. Jace gets murdered. Rhaenyra gets angry.
Sure.
Meanwhile, in the Reach, Daemon frees Otto, maybe, and they put down the rebels in the Reach. The Westermen attack the Rivermen. Jason Lannister dies. Aemond takes Harrenhal. Where's Daemon? Aemond kills Simon and hooks up with Alys. Rhaenyra, with Aemond gone, takes King's Landing and is like, where is Aegon? And then maybe Daemon and Aemond die together at the God's Eye to finish the season. Or maybe that's early next season.
It does make sense as a great like climactic season finale.
Great victory for Rhaenyra, but the death of Daemon would be a cool counterpoint.
Yeah.
And then season 4.
It also like every season 1 ends with Luke's death. Season 2 was supposed to end with Jace's death. Season 3 ending with Daemon's death. It's just got this cool symmetry that has been ruined by David Zaslav.
Classic. So season 4 might start with like Tumbleton. They might combine the first and second battles of Tumbleton. So that's when Hugh and Ulf betray the Blacks, and then eventually Addam also dies there, and Daemon dies there, and maybe Otto will die there. Criston is going to die in the Riverlands. Lots of battles and slogs there. Helena's going to kill herself. The peasants are going to kill the dragons at the Dragonpit. And Rhaenyra is going to flee King's Landing and be killed by Aegon and Sunfyre. Mysaria will die at some point. Aegon will be poisoned by Larys and maybe by Alicent. And then in the end, Cregan will take over, kill Larys. They'll make plans for a regency. They'll marry Aegon III to Jaehaera, and then the credits roll. And also Rhaena maybe dies, ?
And the camera cuts to Laenor cooking dinner in Volantis.
Yeah, with Laenor. Yeah, that sounds reasonable when you say it like that, doesn't it? It's only a battle and a major death each episode.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
The way you've laid it out there is that Rhaenyra takes King's Landing early in season 3 and leaves King's Landing early in season 4. Thereabouts, right?
I think she leaves King's Landing like sort of mid season 4.
So Rhaenyra ruling in King's Landing or like presiding over King's Landing for over a season. I don't know, like, is she going to get up to enough for that to not be boring as hell?
Oh, there's a lot going on with
I guess.
Gaemon and the Shepherd
Dragonpit,
and Rosby and Stokeworth.
Pale hair.
And
Okay. I'm just like a little worried for how many issues happened during that time.
well, they've clearly established in season 2 that the writers love nothing better than Rhaenyra
Dragging
being
her fucking
stressed at a table with a crown on her head.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But what would you have her do?
When you compare it to season 2, it is at least like it's like 2 or 3 times more fast paced than season 2.
Not necessarily season 1.
And this is only the most essential stuff. This is cutting out many battles and characters, and like the whole aftermath of the dance could be a whole season in and of itself.
We've gone through all of this, like, and I mentioned Benjicott Blackwood offhandedly once. You know, like there's a lot that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, but that's a rough estimation of what the space of it might be, the shape of it might be. There's also all this stuff about, like Dalton Greyjoy attacks the Westerlands. And
oh, fuck, we haven't mentioned the Red Kraken once. That's crazy. He has to be a part of it. They mentioned him several times in season 2.
And like Sharako dies and the Triarchy collapses and... Yeah, and there's another little Velaryon inheritance crisis. And
God, who has the time?
there's a million subplots that could also
we're
be in
also
there.
assuming that they're cutting the show off at the earliest viable point. That might not be the case. They might try and get to later points. I don't know.
If they try and speedrun it and like get into the Regency and the Hooded Hand and the rise of Unwin Peak and
My God, there's no fucking time for any of that. When I was thinking about the future of the show, when we didn't know what it was going to look like during season 1, when we didn't know there was going to be 4 seasons of 8 episodes, I was like, man, it would be great to end this thing when Viserys returns.
Yeah.
But that is like, there's no fucking way now.
Well, I mean, Aegon and Viserys are just too young.
Yeah, exactly.
They're toddlers. There's no way they're doing that. So yeah, and they won't have Boros Baratheon. I mean, Boros is kind of funny because like Boros like invades Dawn instead of participating in the dance. Like he's one of the most like aggro dickheads.
Can't wait for that to be like offhandedly brought up in a council meeting and everyone to be like, what?
Yeah.
And then we don't hear about it again for another year.
Boros Baratheon has gathered his banners. He's on the march.
South.
But he's marching the wrong way. That's very funny, but I don't know if they're going to include any of that.
I mean, it is like a weird hole then at that point, right? Because like we've went to all this trouble of setting up an alliance between the Greens and Storm's End and nothing comes of it.
I mean, yeah. But Boros Baratheon got a lot of screen time, relatively speaking. And he was like good. Like Boros was good.
For someone who's not going to do anything in the war unless they change it. Maybe they truncate it. Maybe they roll Boros Baratheon in with Jason Lannister. I don't fucking know.
Man, the structure and the pacing of this show at the end of the day is balked. It is so like lopsided and asymmetrical. Yeah. Like going from season 2 to season 3 is going to be like massive like whiplash in terms of the pace. Yeah. And again, like Ryan Condal said in an interview, I think that the cadence of the narrative could be consistent.
Okay.
Like what? Huh?
I think I can try to unpack what he means by that. And that's like, so the amount of things happening can accelerate without the pace of the dramatic arc accelerating. So, Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, it means that they have to cut most of the characters and plot points to maintain the same like pace. Like, it just means that they'll just focus on Rhaenyra and Alicent and Daemon and not include all the extra stuff. So it won't feel like it's super fast-paced.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's what it means. Or he was just, like, really indirectly saying, yeah, I think it'll be 8 episodes a season, is the other because that's the question that they asked him when he replied that.
Right. He could have just said, yeah. But instead
why say one word when you can say a paragraph? He is a writer after all.
The dramatic cadence.
Where's your sense of flair, Glidus?
I mean, cadence is such a wonderful word. Why not use it all the time? Bum.
I'm just really happy that I'm not the face of a multi-million-dollar Hollywood production.
Well, don't jinx it.
It could happen to you. It's more like say no to show running Hollywood productions, kids. Say no. I think that they do.
I mean, there was a brief period when Netflix was like approaching random people on the street, offering them 7-figure deals for shows. Quick, come up with a show.
People less qualified than us have been given Netflix deals, and D&D are one of them. I think they should include Black Alley Blackwood because she's so essential to the healing process.
I agree with that specifically.
And there's that whole lovely thing about like the Northmen who came south to die instead stay and marry and repopulate the Riverlands, which were scorched. That's beautiful. They need to include that.
Yeah.
And that could, like they need like a little epilogue montage. As much as I was frustrated by the epilogue montage at the end of season 2, they could do a good epilogue montage at the end of the series. When women ruled, the book said, the women made the peace with ravens, words, and kisses.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, they need to do a bit of that. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
and
We-
it's
we
like
do
the
need, like-
women are saving the world. Cut to Alys Rivers plotting and murdering people with sorcery in
Alicent
Harrenhal.
poisoning her son.
Yeah,
And then a flashback of Rhaenys popping through the floor.
there's so much gender in this backhand. So yeah, that's House of the Dragon. Anyway,
There's no need to watch the show anymore or listen to anyone talk about it.
yeah, no, we've covered it. I
Yeah,
don't think
it's
anyone
over.
needs to talk about dragons.
In fact, they
ever
don't even
again.
need to make the show now.
Are we?
It's over.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Are we done with
pack-
talking about House of the Dragon season 2?
Pack it up, delete the channel. Off we go. Back to GOT review. Season 6
Yeah.
piss takes. Let's finish.
I guess I need to get a proper job now.
Oh, fuck. I don't have any skills.
I need to update my CV stat. This was fun.
This was fun. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for talking about dragons with me. This was delightful.
You
And yeah,
got it.
thank you to everyone for listening.
And thanks for and not just to this one, the whole season, our whole coverage. This has been an interesting process.
I am deliriously grateful for the support.
Oh, it's insane. I cannot believe it.
Like maybe we don't say that enough.
I don't think we
I'm
do.
deliriously grateful. You know, Patreon support and Nebula support, but yeah, just like
Yeah, just
watching and
YouTube
good
viewership.
vibes. Just all of those things
Yeah.
are really great, and it makes it possible to make these videos and things.
I have really missed streaming,
Yeah.
and we need to get back to that. We
Yeah.
have so many things that we need to do.
Yeah, now that we are
The list is so long.
free of Hot D, that we have many ideas for streams and videos and things, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to Glidus and subscribe to Alt Shift X, and this is available on.
This is the podcast feed, isn't it?
Yes,
That's crazy.
We're on a podcast right now.
Oh
Can
my
you believe
God.
it?
Well, only if they're actually listening on an iPod. Otherwise, it's something else.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what a podcast is now that Spotify has redefined it as a exclusive audio content subscription stream TM, but you can find us on podcast apps, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Patreon. We appreciate the Patreon support. And yeah, we will return. I hope you enjoyed this lengthy chat.
I did.
I did too. This was Dragon Time.